Chapter 888. The End and the Beginning. As soon as Wang Wei arrived, someone rushed into his arms. "I'm so glad you're okay," said Yu Yan, holding her son tightly as if this would be their last meeting. She saw how dangerous the battle was and how close her son came to death. She saw the pain in his eyes after losing Li Jun. At that point, Yu Yan did not care whether he succeeded. She only wanted him to return home safe and sound. "I'm fine," said Wang Wei, reassuring her while gently caressing her back. Wang Tian had already walked before him, calmer than his mother. However, Wang Wei could detect his raging emotions. He knew the latter was only trying to remain calm to show his majesty as a father. "I cannot tell you how proud I am," said Wang Tian, patting his son's shoulder. He had dreamt of this moment for over 1,000,000 years, and when it finally happened he did not know what to say. All the words and emotions he wished to convey were condensed into this single phrase. "Where is grandfather?" Wang Wei did not finish his words before hearing a boisterous laugh from the hall. From such a distance he could smell the stench of alcohol. "He's been bragging to his old friend ever since you won," said Wang Tian, shaking his head in helplessness. Wang Wei wanted to say he thought all his old friends were dead, but he knew this was inappropriate. "Let's go see him." Wang Wei walked into the hall with his mother tightly holding onto his arm. "My grandson, come drink with me," said Wang Chang, inviting Wang Wei to sit beside him. "My grandson is an emperor, no, an eternal emperor. Wait, maybe something more." He looked at Wang Wei before shaking his head. "That's not important for now. I can now die peacefully. And when I see the ancestors of the Wang clan in the afterlife, I can brag for all eternity." Wang Tian's mouth twitched. Many of the Wang clan's ancestors are alive and well. So, isn't his father cursing them to die? Wang Wei did not care as much about etiquette as his father, so he drank with the old man. "Do you have better wine? You're an emperor, you should have better wine." "Father, Wire has just proven the Tao, how could he have time to brew wine?" "That's true," replied Wang Chang with some regret. He felt the current wine was not up to par with the occasion. Wang Wei shook his head before taking out a jar of wine. As soon as he opened the lid, Wang Chang's eyes lit up. "This wine. It has been blessed with the Grand Tao source for only 33 years, but it should be enough for this occasion. Wang Wei will need high-level wine and cuisine for his essence flower ability." So, one of the first things he did after proving the Tao was using his Grand Tao source to brew wine and nourish his food. Now that he has acquired the array Grand Tao source, he will install arrays to ensure a better nourishment process for his food, wine and other materials. "Excellent," said Wang Chang, his voice as loud as ever. The family had a great dinner. Everybody was doing well until Yu Yan said something. "What a great day for our family," said Wang Tian. "Indeed. In the future our family will continue to prosper," added Wang Chang, who knew that many of their family plans would have no problems now that Wang Wei became an emperor. "If only she were here," said Yu Yan with a sigh, immediately quieting the room. She instantly realized her mistake, looking at her son with worry. "I'm fine," said Wang Wei, looking at the empty spot at the table. "Anyway, after I ascend, I will search for her." Everyone gave him their reassurance that everything would be fine. "Let's not mention this," said Wang Wei. "I feel something is different about you." "You noticed?" nodded Wang Tian. "After comprehending your scripture, I have almost met the requirement to achieve 9 supremacy." "That's great news." Wang Wei understood what was happening. The scripture of an eternal supreme has a low probability of allowing someone to understand a small portion of existence. His immeasurable emperor tier scripture has drastically increased that probability, even though it is still low. So, with his father's talent he succeeded in that low probability. Wang Wei raised his hand to summon his scripture. "Here." He handed the scripture to his father before condensing a second one for his mother. "This version contains my direct preaching about existence." Wang Wei did not have high hopes for his mother. She has the talent to become an eternal emperor, but it's on the low end of the spectrum, similar to Emperor Kong. So, if she wished to become an eternal emperor, he had to give her some aid and scheme something. Nevertheless, he wanted to try, and even if she failed, the scripture would deepen her foundation and give her tremendous help for the future. Yu Yan and Wang Tian placed the scriptures away, knowing this was not the time for cultivation. "I will search for a special longevity chi for your situation," said Wang Wei to his grandfather. "No need to worry. The Grand Tao baptism has greatly alleviated my situation." "That's good. Are you prepared to face Emperor Nine's sons?" "No problem. Do you want to do it as soon as possible?" "No, I want to see the great era you're about to create." Wang Wei nodded before spending the entire day with his family. The next day his grandfather continued drinking and his father went to retreat, leaving only his mother, who wanted to continue spending time with him. Wang Wei went to see the ancestors. He found himself in a large room with one seat, followed by countless people standing. In the front row were the named insurgent like Origin 1, Sword 1, etc. He looked at all these immortals cultivators, knowing this was the true foundation of the sect. And his job will be to deepen that foundation. He looked at everybody, focusing on the people in front. He saw someone he did not recognize. That's Shadow 1, explained Origin 1. He's in charge of the safety of the Wang clan in the hidden world. Wang Wei remembered the Shadow Ruler Emperor had two insurgents. The first was Ruler, cultivated the normal way, and the second was Shadow 1, cultivated through the Shadow Lord art. With a quick look, Wang Wei knew this person's history. He was the sect master that Shadow Ruler defeated before becoming the sect master and proving the Tao. Sect master, saluted Shadow 1. Wang Wei nodded to him. Sect master, someone sent a talisman yesterday, said Sword 1. We did not want to interrupt your family time, so we waited until today. Wang Wei received the talisman and used it. Su Shi has already returned, he muttered. Is that true? Yes. That means the academy also has an eternal emperor? Everyone looked at Wang Wei for confirmation, so Wang Wei nodded. It will not, explained Wang Wei calmly. I can also tell you that Huo Fenghuang and Ao Shin have already become 6-star primarchs. Soon, Fengheng will also become an eternal. Plus, I have detected 3 immortal sovereigns hiding in this world. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Xiaomicronim. However, even if they all work together, they cannot stop me. Everyone quieted down, shock visible on their faces. However, soon it was replaced by excitement. Yes, their sect master was an unparalleled talent this world has never seen. So they don't have to worry. So, will this world really become a place where emperors, Tao ancestors and immortal venerables walked on the surface, becoming a common thing? Muttered one of the cultivators. However, with the cultivation of everyone present, they heard him loud and clear. It's good that you have this strength and are confident, said Origin 1. However, their existence will still have some effect, even if minimal. I have taken that into consideration, nodded Wang Wei. He was calm as ever, not letting his strength get into his head. You said that Fengheng will prove the Tao, meaning he has not yet? Should we interfere in his promotion? Is that even possible? It's possible since he's most likely using an unorthodox path. The rise of Buddhism will bring about a large quantity of merit. If the sect plays their cards correctly, they can get a handful of it. Weakening their leader, Fengheng, would be an ideal step toward that goal. No need, said Wang Wei. I owe Buddhism great karma, so not only must we not interfere, we must strive for their flourishment. Sect master, we can still allow Buddhism to flourish while also eliminating Fengheng. Yes, you could be the new leader of Buddhism. Wang Wei looked at the 2 fearless guys who said these words and shook his head. The karma involved in Buddhism is something even I'm afraid of. But you want to get involved in that quagmire? These 2 immortals immediately felt the fear of God deep in their souls. Their transcended bodies began to sweat for the first time in billions of years. Is it that scary? Asked Origin 1. They had been planning things for years, so unlike these people, they knew about the rise of Buddhism sooner and the fact their leader, Fengheng, would use merit to prove the Tao. So, a few of them tried to convince Wang Wei before to take the leadership position of Buddhism. But Wang Wei has always been vague about why he rejected their proposal, so they thought of waiting until he proved the Tao, when he had no far before persuading him once more. But now it appeared things were not simple. Let me put it simply, even the current founders with their incomprehensible realms cannot get involved in this matter, let alone me. Origin and Sword 1's faces became extremely serious as they were one of the few who knew the meaning of these words. In the future, even after I leave, do not easily get entangled in the affairs of Buddhism, warned Wang Wei. Help if you can without losing too much. If it's not worth it, don't interfere. Wang Wei knew he was already in Methraia's camp in this battle, but he also did not want to get too involved, until he had more power and a deeper understanding of her realm. As you wish. All right, let's get back to business, said Wang Wei. Is everything ready? Yes. Excellent. Let's move. Wang Wei handed 3 talismans. The first one went to Sword 1, who headed to the Commerce Hub. The second was to Ruler 1, who headed to the outside fake guards responsible for spreading a spy network across otherworld communities. He's responsible for Wang Zhe's job, and she will take over after she becomes an insurgent. The third talisman belonged to an immortal cultivator who was Miscellaneous One's apprentice. His job was to head to the battle spirit world, where his mission was to keep watch on the Spirit Genesis sect. Finally, time passed and the 100-year deadline arrived. Wang Wei once again appeared above the heavens, all eyes from myriad races on him. He was above a deserted place in the central continent. He waved his hand and a towering tree manifested. World Tree, thought everybody watching with greed in their eyes. However, they soon remembered who this thing belonged to. Subsequently, a beautiful palace appeared in the sky. Everyone was shocked as this palace was too beautiful. At one glance, people will have one thought in their mind: frowny face, a place worthy of a peerless emperor. The palace was grand. Although it was called a palace, it was as large as any small thousand world. Furthermore, the space expanded as Wang Wei fused the palace with the world tree. Wang Wei pointed at certain areas, and the watchers immediately felt the changes. A vast quantity of innate qi appeared in one area, while in the second area, they detected immortal qi. I really need that immortal source, thought Wang Wei, not satisfied with the level of immortal qi. He used his qi flower ability to connect to the source qi space, finding a few areas with innate qi and immortal qi. However, he was not satisfied with the immortal qi veins he discovered. Finally, someone appeared before Wang Wei. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Yes." Wang Wei looked at the old beggar, thinking about their first meeting during the Academy's trial or their relationship during his Supreme Outlaw trial. There is no going back now. I know and am prepared. A third eye appeared on the beggar's head. Wang Wei knew it was the Heaven Dao innate treasure he used to pass his Supreme Outlaw trial, allowing him to continue using his Heaven Dao. Very well. Wang Wei's eyes penetrated the world's core and saw the physical manifestation of Heavenly Dao, a cloud-like creature. With a flick of his finger, he suppressed Heavenly Dao, forced it out of the world's core and shoved it into the beggar's body. During the entire process, Heavenly Dao did not resist for two reasons. Firstly, it was pointless to resist. The current Wang Wei strength is not something he could resist. Furthermore, as an emperor he has a high immunity to karma, so it won't matter if he slaughtered every living creature in the world, including Heavenly Dao itself. Lastly, Wang Wei already communicated his plan, and Heavenly Dao agreed after asking for a few negotiating points. Immediately afterward, the old beggar's eyes became cold and indifferent, and a subtle aura appeared on his third eye. Wang Wei waved his hand to send the old beggar to a special palace area. Finally, Wang Wei's voice once again echoed throughout the world. "I am the fate-dominating emperor. From now on, I will be the heavenly emperor, controlling the ups and downs of heaven and earth." Auspicious sounds and visions appeared in the sky, celebrating the birth of this new karma position. The Watcher sect. An old man took out a book and words appeared on it. The 23rd day of the 3rd month, year 123, 45 billion of the current era, the Heavenly Emperor era began. The fate-dominating emperor declared the old era the dragon-raising era, signifying the era's purpose was to raise a proud and majestic dragon. Then a section of the book changed. The era's name changed: Chaos Era, Primordial Era, Beginning Emperor Era, Void Null Era, Ancient Emperor Era, Incense Faith Era, Devil Era, Middle Emperor Era, Academy Dao Era, New Emperor Era, Dragon-raising Era, Heavenly Emperor Era. End of the voluminous volume. Heavenly Emperor ERA. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know. Report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 890. Assignments. Let's proceed with the important parts, said Wang Wei, who suddenly paused, making everybody alert. I almost forgot something. He raised his hand in the distance and 3 objects flew into his hand. The people who saw these artifacts, mostly swords, were shocked. Others had an ugly look on their faces. Racial luck artifact, muttered someone who recognized the human destiny sword, the demon destiny sword, the sea destiny trident, and many other small races' luck condensation artifacts. The person most affected by this event was Ao Shen. The demon race had just acquired their racial destiny item, but it was taken back. However, before he could say anything or make a scene, Wang Wei looked at him. I am a person who likes to keep his word. So, I will compensate your demon race. After saying that, Wang Wei ignored these people and fused these items into the heavenly court. Boom. A terrifying vision covered the world. A dark gold dragon manifested between heaven and earth. As soon as people saw the dragon, they knew it was different as it had 9 legs and a crown around its horn. After the dragon condensed, it fused with the heavenly court. All the representatives could no longer remain calm. The Heavenly Emperor forcefully controls heavenly Tao, becoming the ruler of heaven and earth. Now he forcefully took the luck of all races in the myriad emperor world, condensing the luck of the entire world into the heavenly court. With such a destiny, they could imagine how much faster his cultivation would be from now. As long as his strength can increase by a few more %, he will become even more scary. I can see the greed oozing out of your bodies, said Wang Wei with a smile. It's both amusing and interesting. The room was so quiet that you could hear the sound of an ant walking. Wang Wei shook his head, no longer amused by these people's reaction. All the conferred gods will have a palace in the heavenly court. You can stay here and enjoy the blessing of the world's luck. Of course, even if you don't stay here, the blessing will still apply, just not as good. People looked around and finally realized many things. For example, why is this place full of innate and immortal qi? Although high-level energy appears to be only useful for immortal venerables, that's far from the truth. Great emperors and Tao ancestors also had requirements for an environment with better energy. After absorbing it, their soul will receive blessing and thus increase the rate at which they understand the grand Tao source. This truth is one of the many reasons the era before the Null Era was so much better than the current time. It's also one of the reasons emperors would stay longer in the lower dimension. What a brilliant method, thought Su Shi after hearing Wang Wei's words. She understood the latter was using this method to gather people into the heavenly court. He did not use force, which could easily arouse the rebellious nature of these cultivators and force them to group together to attack him. Instead, he lured them into the court with irresistible benefit. Furthermore, these emperor lineages do not have a choice to accept this deal. If they do not, there is a group of people who will rush to accept loose cultivators. Although these people have no sense of belonging to any factions, they will do anything as long as the benefits are enough. So, as long as these factions do not want the loose cultivators to become too powerful with the help of the court, they have to accept this invitation. Let's continue, declared Wang Wei once everybody stopped discussing. The conferred god list floated before him. Take the edict. In my name as the heavenly emperor, ruler of heaven and earth, I appoint Origin One as the central god of Qilin, overseer of the central continent. A brilliant light flashed in the list as a new name appeared. Su Shi will be the southern god of Phoenix, overseer of the southern continent. Ao Shun will be the northern god of Tortoise, overseer of the northern continent. Hua Feng Huang will be the eastern god of Dragon, overseer of the eastern continent. Feng Heng will be the Wheatsern god of Tiger, overseer of the western continent. No one reacted yet as they contemplated these assignments. Of course, the first reaction was that many people were not happy. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Xiaomicron why these people? Their first answer was these people were the only group with an eternal level representative, but people soon gave up that idea when they saw that Feng Heng was nothing but a mortal. Although he was accompanied by an insurgent based on the latter's aura, he was only second class at best. Then, the situation became worse when people discovered these new gods had the power to confer gods under their domain. No one paid attention to the first warning on the page that said the Heavenly Emperor has the power to refuse an appointment or dismiss any appointments. The courtroom was quiet as many people were pondering these assignments. The people activated all their treasures to ensure no one snooped on their conversation. Su Shi glanced at the list in her hand, deep in thought. She figured out her role as a god. Although the Heavenly Emperor explained it, it was clearer now. For example, Heavenly Tao's highest expenditure of world source is to heal the space after cultivators of Tier 7 and above fight. However, now she was responsible for using her power to heal the space, allowing Heavenly Tao to conserve more world source. With this method, the myriad Emperor world's world source will reach an unimaginable level in less than 1,000 years of the court's existence. As such, the world will enter a level of prosperity that has never been seen. She could see how the world would benefit in a short 1,000 years, let alone after countless generations. The Heavenly Emperor era is destined to be prosperous. She glanced at the man sitting on the throne, finally understanding why he was a complete era son. He must have been planning this for thousands of years. His plans are excellent, but he's also an expert schemer, she analyzed. Su Shi represented the Enlightened Emperor Academy, a faction in the central continent, but she now was the overseer of the southern continent. These sects and factions in the south will never allow people to encroach on their territory. So, if she does not take care of the situation properly, the academy will be enthralled in many disputes, even leading to the Emperor Tao War. In the end, even if they win, they will suffer and be weakened to a certain extent. Something is bothering me. Based on my strength, shouldn't I be awarded the eastern continent, the second strongest of the 5? Analyzed Su Shi. If he wanted to weaken the academy, it would make sense to send me to the east, where there are the second strongest emperor lineages after the central continent. Could it be that he felt it was more important to deal with the ancient clans? Su Shi knew the ancient clans would have the second most difficulty in this assignment after Feng Heng. With their arrogance, how they usually operate, and the strength of the faction in the east, their rule will be a nightmare. Forget it. I'm satisfied with the south. Although the south was not as good as the east, it had many advantages. It was the holy land of all professions. In terms of resources, they do not lose to the central continent because of these professions. What I'm more concerned about is why he assigned Feng Heng to the west. In such a place ruled by devil cultivators, it would be a nightmare for anyone, especially since there is the D clan to consider. A few people had similar thoughts as Su Shi, so they gave glances to Feng Heng, who remained calm. Only he knew the deep meaning behind his assignments. I guess he does not want my contradictions with Taoism to affect his rule, analyzed Feng Heng. He's on my side but does not want to get too involved. The rise of Buddhism required a stepping stone and he chose Taoism. However, the Heavenly Emperor predicted his actions and told him to change to a new target, the devil cultivators in the West. He obviously wants to deal with these people, but now he's also using Buddhism as his sword. Feng Heng figured everything out clearly, but he did not care. As long as he has value, the Heavenly Emperor will side and help him in Buddhism. Furthermore, Buddhism's innate pure nature and understanding of the mind is the nemesis of these devil cultivators. I only need to ensure I get the D clan to my side and give them enough god positions. Furthermore, there is room for greater development, thought Feng Heng with shining eyes. If Buddhism could become the national religion of the heavenly court, the benefit will be incalculable. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 891. Court dispute: the northern continent will be in chaos, thought Ao Shen. The demon race has always been one of the weakest factions, but they control one of the largest areas. Previously, the northern continent had no values. But with the heavenly court, such a place that was once considered barren is now more desirable than an immortal-like beautiful woman who was naked. God positions can bring merit and blessing for cultivation. As such, too many people will do anything to get their hands on one. The best way to do so is to attack the weak demon race. Many ideas flashed in Ao Shen's mind as he thought about how to deal with this situation. He has the strength, but these people are not stupid. After discovering they could not defeat him, they would use other ways to force him to give up the positions. While Feng Huang remained calm on the surface, she could see the downside of her appointment. If she were not careful, the ancient clan would make countless enemies in the eastern continent, ruining their plans for the future. However, she was very happy about the existence of the heavenly court. Once their clan cultivates a heavenly emperor, it will be easier to succeed. As long as he leaves, I might have a chance to sit on that throne, she thought calmly. We're not finished yet, continued Wang Wei. The sea will also be divided into 5 sections. The god of the Central Sea will be overseen by the Panlong clan. The god of the Eastern Sea will be overseen by the Sea Lion clan. The god of the Northern Sea will be overseen by the Tao Opening sect. The god of the Western Sea will be overseen by the Loose Cultivator Alliance. The god of the Southern Sea will be overseen by the Sword Casting Villa. The last one belonged to the Sword Casting Villa. Wang Wei did not expect these sword cultivators to be hiding so deep. Although the latter is sealed, they should be able to exit with the current era. Your Majesty, with all due respect, I protest. Everyone looked at the person who spoke and saw it was someone from the sea race. Many people waited as they knew a good show was about to happen. The Panglong race representative took a deep breath, trying to organize his words. He knew if he were not careful, his life would be forfeited today. Even worse, his race might suffer. Our sea race? Okay, I don't want to hear your nonsense, said Wang Wei. The sea is too vast and you people only occupied a small portion of it. So there are no problems with dividing. But, Wang Wei gazed at him and he did not dare open his mouth. The sea race has been hiding behind the scenes for too long. Imagine my shock when I learned there are 2 immortal venerables still hiding there. Everyone's faces changed after hearing this. Now they understood why these 2 races were chosen as representatives. Immediately they became guarded against the sea race. The situation has changed, continued Wang Wei. You can no longer use the bare minimum when dealing with issues regarding the world while secretly conserving strength. If you continue this way, even if I can tolerate you, future heavenly emperors won't. The sea race's people chose to retreat. They understood the heavenly emperor was determined to interfere in the affairs of the sea race. Many expected this outcome since there were plenty of signs. The Tao opening sect had created many stations in the sea, gathering intelligence and resources. They were adamant about their actions and refused any of the other race's objections. Furthermore, they could feel all these factions' weariness against their race. If they did not integrate into this era, they might suffer tremendously in the future. Any more questions? Asked Wang Wei. I have one, said Ao Shin. Can I exchange something else for the position of the god of the moon? Your Majesty, you must not, someone yelled. Yes. The Yin power of the moon can awaken animals' spiritual intelligence, turning them into demons. Such a position should never be in the hands of the demon race. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Xiaomicron, if the demon race holds the position of the moon god, they can drastically increase their population. So, no one wanted for such a thing to happen. The moon god position belongs to the Eternal Dream sect, and the sun god position is for the Yu clan, responded Wang Wei, making people feel relieved. Although these positions were not as important as the main gods overseeing a continent or sea region, they were still very important to the operation of the world. The moon and the sun are vital to cultivating the soul and have a great effect on mortals, so the position is very high. Ao Shin was disappointed even though he did not have much hope. These factions would never allow them such a great advantage. Meanwhile, the sulking spirit race finally felt some relief. The Eternal Dream sect was half spirit race, half human factions. They can place more emphasis on the Eternal Dream sect to see if they can use the moon power to cultivate more members for their sect. Your Majesty, I have some concerns for the future, said another representative. Wang Wei's mouth almost twitched as he knew someone else was thinking about him after he left. Please? What is to stop a future heavenly emperor from walking the same path as the Golden Ape Emperor? Asked the person, giving Ao Shin strange glances. Although the proud dragon did not react, his trembling eyelashes showed he was trying to hide his anger. The demon race was in this situation because of the people's fear of the Golden Ape Emperor, fearing he would drive the human race close to extinction as he did near the end of the ancient emperor era. After someone asked this question, everyone paid attention to see how Wang Wei would answer. So he said calmly, "Don't let them." Everyone looked at him as if to say, what kind of answer was that? It's simple, isn't it? Said Wang Wei as he shrugged his shoulders. Cultivate peerless geniuses at all costs to prevent other races from sitting in this position. Your Majesty, things are not so simple. Yes, making an all-out effort to cultivate genius is a major factor in creating a powerful great emperor. However, the biggest trouble is often to find such a genius with the potential to reach such height. You people cannot imagine how brilliant this era will be, said Wang Wei nonchalantly. So, genius will be as common as dogs from now on. Everyone was speechless. This man was so confident that it went beyond the level of arrogance, turning into a natural charm. Of course you better prepare. Use the opportunity one give you in my generation to cultivate enough immortal sovereigns. They will serve as a restraint for future heavenly emperors. Everyone's eyes lit up. The implication of these words is that this generation will be prosperous enough to cultivate many immortal sovereigns, which will, in turn, balance the power of the heavenly emperor. No, balancing the power of future heavenly emperors. The monster before them is confident enough to use this generation to reach a height of power they could not fathom. Everything comes in full circle, thought Su Shi. Future heavenly emperors must be top of the line if they don't want to be figureheads and hold all the power of the heavenly court. They also must have the support of factions that have immortal sovereigns. She understood Wang Wei wanted to ensure his replacement had not only strength but also the political skill to control the court. They must be all round. Otherwise they can only occupy the benefit of the position and not the power. Wang Wei looked at these people and smiled. The test he will leave for his successor will weed out people with extreme thoughts and ideologies. However, such a thing is not guaranteed to be perfect and detect everyone. Furthermore, a heavenly emperor might suddenly change during his reign after experiencing certain things. Plus, he did not think his method would be impossible to trick. He had never underestimated the abilities of these people. So, after years of studying and effort, someone might create something. As such, he will leave a protective mechanism to prevent some other race heavenly emperor from destroying the human race or affecting his era. As the creator of this era and the heavenly court, his benefit will not end even after ascending. Of course, Wang Wei will not care if a foreign race emperor removed all the human god positions and changed them to their race. As long as they have the strength and skill to do such a thing, he won't care even if the Dao opening sect is affected. After leaving all these advantages for the sect, if they cannot keep their positions and power, they can only blame themselves. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 892. Any more questions? Asked Wang Wei. Your Majesty, I do have a question. Go ahead. It's regarding the Qin dynasty treasury. According to our agreement, whoever is the final winner can possess the treasure. So it's mine now, declared Wang Wei, making everyone speechless. No one wanted the world to become turbulent because of the appearance of the human destiny sword in the battle for the treasury. So they kept the sword in the hands of Sun Jiaolong, the crown prince of the great Wu dynasty, agreeing that younger generations could fight for it. Then, whoever proved the Dao in this generation will have control over the treasury. However, some people's idea was to band together and pressure the final winner to share some of the wealth of that treasury. But now they had to restrain their greed. I have a question, asked Wu Fenghuang. What are you? She asked with blazing passion and greed in her eyes, which was out of character for her usual noble and proud personality. Well, what a rude question. I did not mean any offense, Your Majesty, she continued. But many people wonder whether you're an eternal emperor or something else. Everyone looked at him, some with anticipation, others just waiting to see if he would tell the truth. I don't need to hide it, said Wang Wei. He knew that even 11:44 if he revealed the truth, most of the people in this room might forget after his ascension. That's because Grand Dao has not decided whether his immeasurable emperor class is a one-off thing that only he could pull off or would really become another class after eternal emperors. If it chooses the latter, the information will slowly fade from these people's memory. If it chooses the former, his immeasurable class will become common knowledge that most people can calculate or deduce. I am an immeasurable emperor, a one-of-kind class above eternal emperor. I used my ingenuity, will, luck, and Dao foundation to prove the Dao without any foreign aid while also making full use of the heaven will. The representatives' eyes dilated as they understood how to achieve this class of immeasurable emperor. First, someone has to prove the Dao on their own. Then they must become an eternal emperor using the heaven will, casting the Dao will, and comprehending existence. Your Majesty, if I may ask, do you want to know how I succeeded in proving the Dao alone? Asked Wang Wei with a smile. You won't succeed even if I tell you. However, I know you won't believe my words alone. Most of these representatives were embarrassed, but these old foxes with thick skin looked as if nothing had happened. This part of the process was easy. I used the cultivation technique from the Immortal Ascension world. Their creator had the same idea as me and created the system for that sole purpose. But he failed. He paused for a moment to allow them to process this information. Whatever this cultivation technique was, they could get their hands on it after traveling to that world community. But why did the creator fail but the heavenly emperor succeeded? Many people's faces changed as if they had thought of something. So, some of you have figured it out? Said Wang Wei with a smile. The minimum requirement for this method to succeed is to be like me and Di Tian, breaking the barrier between mortal and great emperor. These people wanted to curse. After the reveal of these two strengths, these powerful sects and factions gathered all their members to overview all the knowledge they possessed to see if they could find out how these two did it. However, the conclusion was they were once-in-an-era geniuses that the world had never seen. So, how could they replicate their success? No one was stupid enough to ask the Heavenly Emperor whether a replicable method existed to meet that requirement. However, a few eyes secretly looked at the D clan. Don't look at them for answers, said Wang Wei. He only succeeded due to a rare fortunate encounter from the upper dimension. He paused for a moment before gritting his teeth. That lucky bastard. The intelligent representative immediately analyzed two methods from this sentence and interactions. The Heavenly Emperor used some means that did not rely on luck to break the barrier between mortal and great emperor. This method may be replicable. Secondly, he does not hold any grudge or animosity toward the D clan. Otherwise he would not have said these words to protect them. My method also relied on luck. It was simply not as easy as his. Wang Wei knew if it were not for Hongjun protecting his science and technology world, it would not be so easy for him to become a mortal emperor. Maybe he would have found another way, but the process would have become 1,000 times more difficult. People wondered whether he was lying. However, they soon realized the Heavenly Emperor did not need to lie to them. He could just not answer and not care about their questions. However, some people guessed the reason for his honesty to remove the greed of certain people toward the D clan and the Dao opening sect. Anyone with some brain could see how powerful that sect would become in this era, so keeping a secret method of cultivating mortals with emperor strength should not be a problem. But the Heavenly Emperor still went out of his way to disperse the greed and desires of most of these factions just to protect his sect and ensure its longevity. Any more questions? Asked Wang Wei, but no one answered this time. All right. The next court meeting is 300 years from now. Please fill up the spots for your list by then. I think you should take a look at this novel. There is more? Was the first thought in many people's minds. However, they realized how stupid this thought was. The Heavenly Court has just been established, so the Emperor must be planning many things for this great era. So, these meetings might be more often than they anticipated. Their second thought was that 300 years was too short for such an important task. Finally, they wondered what the next meeting would be about. Wang Wei looked at Wu Ming. He waved his hand to grant him a talisman. With this, you can fulfill our agreement. Wu Ming made a lot of effort to hide his emotions. He bowed with the most respect before standing up with a calm and indifferent expression, ignoring the curious eyes of everybody around. Then Wang Wei focused on Feng Heng. You can proceed. I guarantee your safety until then. Feng Heng felt relieved. He did not prove the Dao because his method required some time, and he knew he could not succeed before Wang Wei. As such, he feared the latter would interfere in the process, ruining his chances. So, he decided to come to this meeting to test Wang Wei's reaction or views toward him. Based on his findings, he would choose whether to prove the Dao in this world or run away before returning. Thank you for your aid, bowed Feng Heng. I'm just repaying my karma, nodded Wang Wei. Many people who were secretly eyeing Feng Heng and Buddhism were regretful. Of all the chosen gods of today's meeting, they were the weakest to attack, even worse than Aoshin's situation. But now, they knew the Emperor guaranteed Feng Heng's protection, so they could only sigh and maybe try to do things in the shadows. Of course, a few people were not surprised by this outcome. They have long known the Heavenly Emperor had the future Buddha scroll, so they analyzed many things after Buddhism received the Western continent. Wang Wei's gaze moved to the representatives from the Great Talisman City. Tell your city lord to come see me. These people's faces changed. They thought the Heavenly Emperor wanted to liquidate their city lord for what she did during the final battle. They expected this outcome and planned many countermeasures but did not know whether they would work. As you wish. The representative remembered Tong Rubing's warning before this meeting. If she is summoned, do not resist and accept everything calmly. So, he resisted the urge to bring that person's name as a way out of their city. Wang Wei's eyes turned to Su Shi. Do you want to talk? Yes, if you don't mind. Very well. You can stay after this meeting. Such a simple conversation raised the alert of many people. They wondered what this is about. Will there be an alliance between the two most powerful factions of the world? Su Shi is a beautiful widow, and the Heavenly Emperor's wife mysteriously disappeared years ago. So, is this a marriage alliance? None of these people present wanted such a thing to appear. The Dao opening sect and the Heavenly Emperor were already so powerful militaristically and politically. They would become a behemoth with this alliance. Meanwhile, the Enlightened Emperor Academy is the only faction with an eternal emperor. Although the demon race and the ancient clan had 2 6-star primarchs, these people disdained any path other than the emperor path, so they always placed the level of 3 of the academy as the highest. Finally, Wang Wei's gaze focused on the supreme, holy, and law lands that hid in the back, trying to appear as invisible as possible in this meeting. These people's worst fear is to be noticed by all these immortal big shots. I know many of you feel left out of this meeting, but this is far from the truth, declared Wang Wei. All of you also have a future in the Heavenly Court. These weak factions swiftly bowed their heads to salute, praising Wang Wei for majesty and generosity. However, he could tell they did not believe his words. They probably thought he said these words to appease them, but all his words were nothing but empty promises. Wang Wei secretly shook his head. I can tell you don't believe me, so I will release some early information so you can prepare. Everyone listened up with bated breath. The Heavenly Court will expand to the entire world community. So, I will confer many gods, some of whom will be responsible for an entire world. The god position for many middle and small thousand worlds will belong to you guys. The reaction to this news was mixed. The weak factions were happy as they knew the Heavenly Emperor meant his words. Other factions were also happy since they now knew they could fight for the god positions for Great Thousand Worlds. After all, a quasi-emperor alone cannot control most Great Thousand Worlds, requiring at least Dao ancestors. However, some of these schemers from emperor lineages were not happy with this news. They were prepared to establish their own heavenly court in the lower realm. "The meeting is officially adjourned," declared Wang Wei. "I will see you again in 300 years. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible." Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. As Su Shi left the heavenly court, she saw an envoy from the great talisman city arriving. She glanced at them and guessed why they arrived a few hours later instead of immediately. She no longer paid attention to them, and with a step, she returned to the academy's domains. She sensed countless eyes watching her from the shadows. Su Shi sensed something and headed to a meeting full of people waiting. "Headmaster," saluted everyone by standing up. Su Shi nodded before taking her position in the main seat. "How did it go?" asked someone. "Fine. I got what I wanted," she replied calmly, making everyone sigh in relief. A few people were previously unhappy with the fact she chose to prove the Tao in another world. After all, this meant they would not receive the luck and destiny for cultivating the ninth emperor. However, after seeing the monstrous battle between Wang Wei and Di Tian, after learning of the current political landscape of the world with the appearance of the heavenly court, they were more than excited to have an eternal emperor shielding them. So, they guessed the headmaster wanted a way to revive Lin Fan, making people excited for myriad reasons. Firstly, they feared Lin Fan would become a flaw in the current headmaster's Tao heart. Their worries were not without basis, as Su Shi's Tao heart was not perfect because of Lin Fan. Luckily, his death was currently an obsession and did not affect her process of proving the Tao. Secondly, Lin Fan is a very talented individual. The academy hopes to one day cultivate him into a heavenly emperor. "Did you ask him about, it's not the right time," said Su Shi. "We have to wait a while before bringing it up." "That's fine. Let's discuss how to deal with the conferred god list." "Any ideas?" asked Su Shi. "Can we see the list?" Su Shi sent them information about what happened in the court, but many people wanted more information. So, she waved her hand to make copies of the list, ensuring everyone had one. As such, every teacher of the academy, from the highest insurgent to the weakest void-shattering realm, began discussing how to proceed with the list. "The god of space is the position with the highest value," commented one of the teachers. "Battles occur every day, so Heavenly Tao has to constantly use World Source to heal the space. Could we permanently reinforce the space? With this method, even quasi-emperors could not break the space while battling?" This was a good question, but no one had an answer. The position of God seemed to be just an energy source, so do they have the power to modify the rules to a certain extent? Everyone looked at Su Shi for answers, making her pause for a moment. "Yes," she replied after realizing the power of the gods like her directly canonized by the heavenly emperor. However, the space god position has some rules or restrictions. "Oh, can you elaborate?" "You can strengthen the space, but you have to ensure that void-shattering realm and heaven-tier artifacts can still teleport. So, no restrictions on other teleportation methods but only during battle? That would be difficult and require some understanding of space law." Everyone pondered for a moment before realizing it should not be a problem for their headmaster to do such a thing. The real question is whether it's worth strengthening the space or continue using the current system? "What do you mean? With the heavenly court present, wouldn't the battle reach the lowest level in history?" "Yes, with the court above their head, most cultivators will restrain themselves. As time passes, the situation will aggravate as the heavenly emperors become more and more powerful. In the early stages, low-level battles will indeed drastically decrease. However, immortal tier battles will become more common in the next few thousand years," added Su Shi. "That's probably why we are given so little time to choose the positions to ensure the battle is condensed into a short period," commented former headmaster Song. "In that case, let's label the space god position as currently most valuable but not the one with the most potential. This position should go to the earth god position. The territory of the southern continent is vast, so a large quantity of world source is needed for operation. The earth god position will also interact with the metal god position when dealing with the ore veins underneath the earth, and the fire god position will be in charge of things like volcanoes. Finally, earth chi is probably the most abundant energy out of the 5 elements. The water god position should be the most valuable for the sea area. But for us, not so much. We can divide the water god position into god of rain, god of river, god of lake, and even god of cloud. The fire god position is very valuable in the southern continent. We could use it to ensure more spiritual flames appeared in the south. Yes, these professions will love us. Better yet, we can use it as a promise to reduce their animosity toward us controlling the south. The people nodded in satisfaction with how flexible this system was. Suddenly, someone raised another issue: how to deal with the problem of weakened strength? The god position requires an individual to take on heavenly Daos job. As such, part of their strength will always be reserved for their god position. In other words, all the gods in the list will always be in a weakened state as part of the strength serves the working operation of the world. I think you should take a look at Snavel. During a conflict, such a reservation could be dangerous. Could we remove our position while engaging in battle? Asked one teacher. No, that's not allowed, replied Su Shi, making everyone frown. Could this be the Heavenly Emperor's plot to weaken everybody? You're thinking too much, replied Su Shi. The solution to this problem is simple: use an artifact that can temporarily replace you when needed. Indeed, that was a good solution. They could just create a god artifact to store their strength and take over the burden for them when needed. I reckon if the Heavenly Emperor wishes, people with god positions could use the court's luck to boost their strength. That's true. Since these fortune dynasties can do it, the court should also have this ability. The question is whether he will? Well, wait for the future to know. I found a very important position, said Taoist ever-changing. Which one? God of fertility, he replied. Mortals take about 90% of the world's population, so the world source needed to ensure the new life is brought into the world is astronomical. I think we have been looking at this thing from the wrong perspective, suddenly added another teacher. What do you mean? I think we should also focus on God's positions that affect mortals. Everyone took a moment to process these words and realized this person was correct, so they discussed positions that have an effect on mortals and how to either distribute them or create special positions. God of harvest would be popular with them. We could also have a god of season. The weather has great effects on mortals. The discussion continued until someone changed the subject. Something has been bothering me, asked former headmaster Song, making everybody focus on him. The Heavenly Emperor should also be sharing Heavenly Daos burden. So, which positions is he taking? That was an excellent question. They did not think the Heavenly Emperor would not participate after knowing the benefit. On the contrary, they guessed he controlled the best positions. Your question is easy to answer, said Su Shi. Creation, fate, heaven, life and death, and even time. Many things need to be created every day between heaven and earth, said Taoist ever-changing. The fate of all mortals and even cultivators must operate without issues, including our destiny and luck. Heaven should involve the order and disorder of the world. I'm guessing the core concept of the conferred god list involves order and disorder Tao. All life must eventually die, and creatures must be born to ensure the operation and development of the world, added another insurgent. He might be even more powerful if you take into account his Tao. You're talking about karma and yin and yang? Yes, he should control these positions as well. No wonder only a first-class emperor can sit in that position. Heavenly Tao is on par with the second-class emperor. As such, if a second-class emperor took the position of Heavenly Emperor, they would be paralyzed as more than half of their strength would be held hostage to replace the world source needed for the world to function. The worst part is this statistic is only because other people already have their positions, so they shared a great burden for the emperor. If they all resigned, forcing the second-class great emperor to bear everything themselves, they might immediately collapse under the weight. I am so envious of the Heavenly Emperor. I can imagine how many merits he will receive in the future and how strong he will become. Is there a chance he would give us the time god position? Everyone looked at Su Shi with strange eyes. She immediately knew what they were thinking. They wished for her to use her beauty to entrap the Heavenly Emperor and get the time god position. Snort. A terrifying aura emanated from her body, scaring the people with these thoughts, reminding them that an eternal emperor stood before them. I need to display my strength and instill awe into these people. Otherwise, something similar might happen again, thought Su Shi with squinted eyes. The discussions continued, however, they could not immediately come up with a final decision. After all, such a thing involved the benefit of many people. So, Su Shi told them to stop and continue another time. Furthermore, she had something else in mind to discuss. I think I know what the next meeting is about. Everybody looked at her, their eyes asking if she was serious. Su Shi did not let them wait long as she waved her hand to manifest an image and explain her deduction. If that is true, we can prepare in advance so we can get more benefits. It's a shame time is too tight. Su Shi walked out of the meeting room, teleporting to her cultivation room. She took out the imprint, looking at it in a daze. She has been thinking about this moment for a very long time, but when faced with the outcome, she hesitated. Have I changed? Has power got to my mind, turning me into someone else? Or is there another reason for my confusion? She did some retrospective on herself, concluding she was running away from her problem. The relationship dynamic with her husband will have to fundamentally change after reviving him. However, he might not be able to accept such a fact. So what will happen then? There will probably be many contradictions. If not resolved properly, they might go their separate ways. She exhaled deeply, reining in her mind. Let's first learn the existence reconstruction. Su Shi took out the information, preparing to review it. However, before she even started, she detected someone outside her room. Teacher Qiujin, what is it? Asked Su Shi directly through divine sense. I'm sorry to bother you, headmaster, said Qiujin, bowing deeply. I was just wondering about my student. Su Shi frowned as in an instant she realized many things. A few people in the academy were worried because she did not mention much about Lin Fan. So they sent his former teacher and Dao protector to ask. As to why they are in such a hurry? She also figured it out. Firstly, it's because she is still only half an emperor of the academy. More importantly, the academy wants to train him to be the second heavenly emperor. With his son as the first heavenly emperor, under the training of such a monster, how dare they think Lin Fan can prove Dao in the second generation? I'm working on it, replied Su Shi. Tell these people to not forget Wang Tian is still there. Qiujin's face changed. Because of Wang Wei's overwhelming presence, people seem to have forgotten that terrible swordsman. With his presence, who dare say they will be the second heavenly emperor? Qiujin bowed before leaving. Sword-casting villa. Jianghu Shuang waited for all the delegates to return. As soon as they appeared, a meeting of the highest order took place. They reviewed every detail of the court. So, our villa has an immortal sovereign? He was not stupid and guessed why their faction was the only one in the eastern continent that was canonized. So, he looked at his master for confirmation, but his master appeared as ignorant as ever. My apology for not telling the truth, said Casting One. The guardian asked that I was the only person privy to this information. It's fine, said Jianghu Shuang. Although he was not happy, he knew this was not the time to focus on such a thing. The important thing is how to deal with the list. Our main problem is the sea race. I doubt they will allow us to divide their territory so easily, and with two immortal sovereigns, it can be an issue. Not necessarily. The Heavenly Emperor does not seem to trust the sea race. We can use his name as a warning, preventing them from interfering. That's a good way, but will that cause conflict with the Heavenly Emperor? I think it's worth trying. After all, we are still a faction with an immortal sovereign. The worst-case scenario is we apologize and pay for our actions. Should we ask the Guardian for his input? Maybe after all, such a major decision should not be taken lightly. Jianghu Shuang immediately frowned after hearing this conversation. However, he did not say anything, but the emotions in his eyes were vivid. Suddenly, a powerful will descended on the room. Do not forget who is the master of the villa, said an old voice. Sect Master, please come see me after this meeting. The will disappeared, leaving everybody in shock. Meanwhile, Jianghu Shuang had glowing eyes. Sect Master, what do you think of this plan? There is no problem, nodded Jianghu Xiang. But we can take steps to prevent contradicting the court. Oh, do you have any suggestions? We can team up with the Yin Moon Palace and the Five-Element Balance Palace to pressure the ancient clan to give us more positions in the east. This method might work. But it's obvious the Heavenly Emperor wants to use us as his sword against the ancient clan. Is that all right? The way I see it, we have three choices, replied Jianghu Shuang. We can be the enemy of the sea race with two immortal sovereigns, the enemy of the ancient clan with 1 6-star pre-march, or the enemy of the Heavenly Emperor, so which one to choose? He calmly looked at everyone whose eyes kept twitching. Well, the ancient clan is an excellent choice. I concur, fellow Taoist. Although these people were not present for the meeting, they experienced the horror of the Heavenly Emperor through the spells of their representative. Wise choice, concurred Jianghu Shuang. The meeting continued for hours before Jianghu Shuang left to see the guardians. He soon found himself in a room divided into two. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Kmthi's side he stood on was brightly lit, while the other side was an endless darkness that even he could not see through. Sect Master. I have seen the guardian, bowed Jianghu Shuang. My seal is not completely lifted, so I cannot meet you yet. Guardian, Do you know when you will be completely free? I should know the exact date after the second court meeting. Jian Shuang immediately sensed that things were not simple based on that answer. I don't have much time, so let's get to business, said the old voice. I have made a deduction and learned there might be a chance for you to prove the Tao in this generation. So be prepared. Jian Shuang's eyes almost popped from his head. With his state of mind, he could not control his emotions, embarrassing himself before the noblest individual in the villa. Lord Guardian, are you serious? Why would I lie about such a thing? Replied the voice. So, you must be prepared. Reach the peak of your potential and wait for this opportunity. I will, replied Jian Shuang. Western Continent, Devil Cultivator meeting? Damn that heavenly emperor and all his bullshit. Why is he targeting us? There is no point in cussing. We need a plan, otherwise we might not survive this generation. How is our previous plan going? Asked the Mo clan patriarch. In such a short time, how could we cultivate an immortal sovereign? Said a woman with a creepy voice. The world was sealed, so we did not even have much time to contact other world communities. The issue is whether such a plan is still feasible. Can we leave this world without the Heavenly Emperor knowing? After knowing what we are trying to do, would that accelerate our destruction? So what should we do? I say we will continue the plan. I disagree. Then do you have a better option? I say we surrender to these bald monks? What? Are you crazy? Don't they have the concept of putting down the knife and becoming Buddha? I say we surrender to them and convert into monks? Fuck you. I would rather die than surrender to these monks. I agree. It would be better to surrender to the court instead of these bald monks. What do you mean? We can just become the thugs of the Heavenly Emperor. At least it's better than these bald monks. That might not be a bad idea. Don't listen to that bastard. I suspect he is a spy of the court. You're a spy of the court. Bastard, don't think I know you hated me because I know you stole. Shut up. Enough, roared the Mo clan patriarch. We are on the verge of destruction and you guys are bickering like children. Everyone calmed down, but a seed was planted in many people's minds. Mo patriarch knew this after seeing the reactions of some people. We need to acquire a god position in one of the highest levels. Then by using it we can cultivate an immortal sovereign. How exactly are we going to do that? It's obvious the court is not a fan of us. I have a three-part plan, said the Mo patriarch. Firstly, some of us do need to surrender to the court, becoming their thug. Such a method should bring us some grace to the Heavenly Emperor, preventing him from interfering in our process of getting a position. Secondly, we must focus on Aoshin. We will try to get some positions from by any means necessary. Finally, we need to clean up our own garden and offer tribute to the Heavenly Court. Everyone's faces changed as they realized the meaning behind these words. Who is it going to be? Asked another devil. We cannot send our best sect to the court, but we also cannot send our weakest one. So, someone in the middle, continued the Mo patriarch. As for the cleanup. Chapter 897, Tong Rubing's Fate Western Continent. The Mo clan patriarch looked at Feng Heng's process of proving the Tao, and many things made sense to him. What did the Heavenly Emperor's words mean during the meeting? Why was Buddhism granted control over the Western Continent instead of the D clan? Everything points to the Heavenly Emperor knowing Feng Heng would do this and prepare in advance. Is there another method to prove the Tao without the Heavenly battle? Does the Heavenly Emperor know of this method? Countless thoughts flashed in his eyes, but he soon gave up as this was not the most important thing to deal with currently. Go call for another meeting. We need to hurry up, said the Mo patriarch. Previously, these devil cultivators did not care about Buddhism's control over their continent. According to them, they would have long teamed up to destroy these bald monks if not for the Heavenly Emperor's protection. But now Feng Heng has turned into an eternal emperor. If they do not react in time, their faction will suffer. Damn it, what's going with this era? Cussed the Mo patriarch. Eternal emperors are supposed to be rare entities, but in a short 100 years since the Heavenly Emperor era started, there are already more than 2 of them. The worst thing is his intuition told him this was just the beginning. Mo patriarch exhaled deeply to calm down. He summoned a few people from his clan. Go contact the D clan to see if they can ally with us to weaken the power of Buddhism. He ordered the first group. He chose someone 17:58 from their clan who is wise, calm and perfect for this kind of diplomatic mission. As for you guys, use more resources to find Mo Xingyun. Patriarch, why are you suddenly interested in the young lady? Since she did not return, I doubt we will ever find her again. No matter what, you must find her, replied the Patriarch. The heaven chosen of this generation seem to have all a unique destiny. I don't know if it's from heaven and earth or the influence of the heavenly emperor, but all of their destiny has changed. So, no matter what, she must return to the clan. If you find her, tell her we are prepared to give absolute power to her, and we're even willing to swear the highest oath. Patriarch raised his hand. Time is changing, so we need to adapt to survive the upcoming ideal. Patriarch sighed, feeling helpless as things kept going wrong for their family. Their clan is technically an eternal clan. However, that selfish bastard, the Heaven Devourer Emperor, never left anything for the clan after proving the Tao, except for his bloodline. As a member of their clan, the luck of cultivating such an emperor automatically went to them, but they did not have an artifact or array to go with it. So, after they detected his body possession, their first reaction was to kill Xingyun or seal him. However, the Heaven Devourer Emperor convinced them by giving them his Emperor's scripture. He made an oath after reviving he would create a genuine foundation for the clan, convincing the Patriarch and many ancestors. But now it seemed they made another poor decision. Hurry up, we don't have much time left. The two groups bowed before disappearing. Heavenly Court. Wang Wei stood in a beautiful garden, surrounded by many spiritual herbs. However, he was not yet satisfied with the garden since its number of immortal and emperor tier resources was pale compared to even the weakest emperor lineage. However, he knew the Heavenly Court had just begun and needed time to gather a deeper foundation. Wang Wei watched Feng Heng and experienced the entire process. However, his eyes did not seem to focus. If anyone could see him now, they would be shocked as his eyes seemed to be the origin of all the universe's secrets. The balance mechanism is more strict than I thought, he muttered with a frown. With true heavenly Daosai present, he could see and divine more information than usual. So, he learned a lot of information. I need to do something. Otherwise, only my father will ever walk the path of eternal. Many thoughts flashed in his eyes. He thought he could drastically change his plan after becoming an immeasurable emperor. However, he was wrong. On the contrary, his identity made the situation worse. Wang Wei used his divine sense to summon something. A few seconds later, a cute and charming woman entered the garden. Tong Ruobing has seen the heavenly emperor. She bowed 90 degrees, showing the most profound respect. Tong Ruobing could not help but sigh to herself. They were once equal, heaven chosen of the same generation competing for the throne. However, as the loser, her fate was to bow to the winner. At ease, replied Wang Wei as he slowly turned to face her. His purple robe decorated in gold seemed perfect for his status. It was as if these two colors were purposely created for a man of his strength and power. Of course, with his natural charisma, any dress he wore would appear noble and majestic. Our great talisman city has sent gifts to celebrate the heavenly emperor's enthronement, continued Tong Ruobing, showing the utmost respect. Her acting was perfect, and no fault could be detected from her facial expression, soul fluctuation, aura, or even mood. Oh, I'm intrigued, said Wang Wei, his voice not hiding his emotions. Tong Ruobing waved her hand to manifest 3 chests behind her. The first one is the traitor's soul, Yuzhou. She did not stop as she knew this gift was technically not real. She only used his soul to show her and the city's allegiance, separating them from the so-called traitors. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Xiamikronim, the second one is a few resources, continued Tong Ruobing, opening the second crate. Wang Wei saw numerous immortal and Tao spiritual herbs, ores and talismans. He even saw a few emperor artifacts and emperor resources. The great Talisman city seemed to go above board to garner his forgiveness. Interesting. These 2 gifts are already this exciting. It makes me look forward to the last one, commented Wang Wei. You won't be disappointed, Your Majesty, replied Tong Ruobing before opening the last treasure. The origin talisman? Wang Wei was genuinely surprised as he saw the final treasure. Our great city would like to lend this treasure to the heavenly emperor. For how long? Asked Wang Wei, who heard the insinuation behind her words. He waved his hand to take this emperor artifact that looked like a talisman pen. He could sense the deep Grand Tao source power inside. Until your ascension. Everyone seemed excited about my departure, commented Wang Wei, making Tong Ruobing wish she could roll her eyes. Isn't it obvious? Your existence has blocked the way for too many people and they cannot defeat you? So we can only wait until you leave. Are you sure about this? Asked Wang Wei. This artifact is the luck condensation artifact of your city. Are you sure you want to leave it in my hand? Yes, we are sure. Such a broad mind and vision, it's worthy of you, commented Wang Wei, who guessed it was Tong Rubing's idea to use this gift to placate him. If you had sufficient strength, you would have been my greatest rival in that generation. Tong Ruobing smiled but did not say anything else. These words were meaningless now that everything had concluded. I like your gift very much, uttered Wang Wei. Soon, the Source Rune Palace's luck would be in his hands, and now, he also had the blessing of the Great Talisman City's luck. If things go smoothly, he might be able to control the Origin Pill Sect's luck, leaving only Origin Weapon Mountain and the Body Dao Cave. With the luck of the Dao Opening Sect and this faction's luck, he might be able to condense something similar to a Cultivation Civilization luck, boosting his cultivation speed to a scary level. After thinking about this, Wang Wei was in a genuinely good mood. All right, our misunderstanding has been resolved, said Wang Wei with a genuine smile. Thank you, Your Majesty, bowed Tong Ruobing, feeling relief. Let me ask you, continued Wang Wei, pausing momentarily and making Tong Rubing's heart skip a beat. Anything I can do for you? She asked, her voice less relaxed. Do you want to become emperor? Tong Rubing's mind went blank for a moment as she did not expect the conversation to turn to this. She reacted quickly as many thoughts flashed in her mind. Are you talking about Feng Heng's method? Exactly. Her breath became rapid before she used all her strength to calm down. What does Your Majesty want? I know you, said Wang Wei, his eyes more profound than ever. With your cleverness, you are probably already thinking of asking Mu Lei to establish a heavenly court in his world. But do you think you can use my ideas without any consequences? Wang Wei released no aura, but Tong Ruobing felt a terrifying dread swallowing her mind. Your Majesty, you have wronged me, said Tong Ruobing as she immediately kneeled on the ground, her face deeply embedded on the floor. Have I? Said Wang Wei as he removed his gaze from her, making Tong Ruobing feel both relief and shame. However, she knew when to bend, stretch, and when to break rather than surrender. It's not impossible to use my idea, uttered Wang Wei nonchalantly, making Tong Rubing's mind go into overdrive. I'm sure to convince my husband to pay to use your idea, she immediately said. It's always a pleasure to deal with smart individuals, said Wang Wei with a smile. Get up. A power enveloped Tong Ruobing, lifting her from the ground. Since it's my idea, you need to pay to use it. So, as long as Mu Lei is willing to pay me the required merit and luck, I will have no problem. Tong Ruobing frowned. She thought Wang Wei would ask for things like immortal tier resources but did not expect he wanted a piece of the pie. She thought for a moment before saying, I don't think it's a problem to pay the merit and luck, but it's impossible to give you god positions. That's fine by me, replied Wang Wei, who knew most worlds would not accept foreigners ruling over their own. Furthermore, we have more room to cooperate. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 898. Existence Manipulation. Tong Ruobing looked puzzled. She could not think how they could continue cooperating, so Wang Wei explained. Do you think it will be easy for Mu Lei to establish a heavenly court? Said Wang Wei. According to my analysis of him, he should have changed his path after the deception trial, walking the path of body refining and chi refining. However, with the talent displayed, even with some fortunate encounter, he would barely become an eternal supreme. Tong Ruobing was quiet as the latter was correct. Based on their conversation, she knew Mu Lei's power could barely reach 25% Grand Dao Source after awakening, using his Dao will, soul, body, and even secret technique. I know he has potential, especially in the body refining path, and his strength would have been higher had he walked the true power Dao realm. However, I guess he was worried about the issue of lifespan, continued Wang Wei, and yet again he was correct. Mu Lei did not want to take the chance he could eventually open the gate of power, so he did not walk the pure body refining path. Your Majesty, what are you getting at? Asked Tong Ruobing directly. The Star Beast world is different from the Myriad Emperor world, explained Wang Wei. It is not a world in decline. On the contrary, because of their unique cultivation system, their world has connections and relationships to hundreds of other heavenward worlds and communities. Can you imagine how many immortal tier powerhouse such a world has? How many immortal sovereigns are secretly hiding? Tong Ruobing's face became solemn. Even if Heavenly Dao schemes against these sovereigns to prevent them from remaining in the lower dimension, I guarantee they will have more than the three we have. So, Do you think Mu Lei can easily dominate heaven and earth in such a powerful world? Continued Wang Wei with a sneer. Using your cunningness to help him, you can use diplomatic means to form many allies in this court using god positions as bargaining chips. However, some people will only use force, so how will he deal with them? So you're offering your help? Asked Tong Ruobing. Yes. If he pays me the merit and luck necessary, I will help him deal with his enemy. I can even hide my identity to prevent any complications. No cultivators wished for other worlds to intervene in their internal affairs, so Wang Wei did not mind hiding his identity to prevent complications for Mu Lei. I should probably hide my identity too in the early stages, thought Tong Ruobing. So what do you say? Asked Wang Wei. I don't have a problem with this deal. However, I'll have to discuss everything with him before we make any final decisions. That's fine, nodded Wang Wei. I can send you there. Do you want my help or do you want to go by yourself? Don't worry, this is a free service. Tong Ruobing's first instinct was to reject such an offer. Her sect has artifacts that can travel in the endless void. However, she suddenly thought it was an excellent opportunity to test the power of the Heavenly Emperor. Thank you, Your Majesty. However, I still need a few minutes to prepare before my departure. That's fine. After you finish, you only need to utter my name, and I will send you to your destination. She opened her mouth to thank him before saying something else entirely. Which name? Anyone is fine, replied Wang Wei as he waved his hand, teleporting her back to her city. What a clever little imp, he muttered. The Heavenly Court and the position of Heavenly Emperor have many layers of meaning for their existence. One of which is Wang Wei's attempt to cheat the system. Of course, according to him, it's just an application of existence. He knew the importance of names and titles. So, after creating the court, he will ensure all documents and word of mouth contain his two names, Fate-dominating Emperor and Heavenly Emperor. His attempt involves the paradox that he is the Heavenly Emperor but at the same time he is not. If one day someone could erase him from existence, meaning the word, Fate-dominating Emperor, was no longer in the annals of history, people would only know there was a first Heavenly Emperor but could not remember who he was and what he accomplished. They might not even know he created the court. That's when Wang Wei's scheme comes into play. Even if he is erased from history, could he revive himself using the name Heavenly Emperor? In other words, he is trying to incorporate the name, Heavenly Emperor, into his existence. If someone wants to kill him in the future, they would have to erase an entire era of history because he will always exist as long as the name or title of Heavenly Emperor exists. Wang Wei's plan has not succeeded yet, but he will try his best. However, some clever people like Tong Ruobing already began to suspect something. It's to be expected since Wang Wei's actions are suspicious. Most eternal emperors would ensure their names resonate between heaven and earth. After all, the more impact they have in the world, the more their names are remembered, the harder they are to kill. However, after proving the Tao, people kept referring to Wang Wei as the Heavenly Emperor instead of the Fate-dominating Emperor. Such an act is suspicious. I think you should take a look at this novel. It doesn't matter if you guys suspect anything, thought Wang Wei. I control the fate of this world. So, I only need to nudge things a little, and your perception of the truth will be twisted. After a while, none of you will ever have this idea again. Better yet, you won't ever think this was my plan. Wang Wei secretly shook his head, thinking how ridiculously powerful he had become compared to the lower dimension. Of course, he was not prideful because he had met the people who reached the pinnacle of the Chaos Universe, so he understood how small his current power was. He waited for a while before receiving Tong Ruobing's signal. With a snap of his finger, she disappeared from the world. Star Beast Community. Tong Ruobing and his team of 5 appeared in a desolate and empty location. She looked around and only noticed void energy that could kill void-shattering realm cultivators if they were not careful. In the distance, she saw something that looked like a shining egg, as if the stars could reflect on the egg's shell. The Star Beast world? We are already here? Supreme true monarchs and quasi-emperors can freely travel in the endless void, not to mention the great emperor. However, even an eternal emperor with space Grand Tao source can teleport them so far away and so effortlessly. There is a void barrier between each community, making traversing each one extremely troublesome even for great emperors. Is this the extent of his power? Could he have easily teleported me directly into the Star Beast world without any problem? Such a thought was scary as it meant no world was safe under this man's grasp. Furthermore, his tentacles might soon spread throughout the entire lower dimension. Tong Ruobing took a deep breath to calm down. Her companions did the same as they reached a similar conclusion. She was prepared to contact Mu Lei and not directly enter the world. However, she discovered a talisman in her hand, along with a message. Then a wry smile appeared on her face. The talisman contained Wang Wei's power. However, she knew the purpose of receiving this thing. A display of strength to Mu Lei. I need to prove the Tao as soon as possible and use whatever means necessary. She has always been ambitious, knowing the importance of strength and power. However, recent events have further reinforced these ideas. Tong Ruobing understood the lower dimension was experiencing a terrifying change. Without power, she will only become a passerby or even worse, die in irrelevance. However, she refused to accept such a fate. As such, she will do whatever is necessary to rise to the top, participate in this new era and leave her own legend. She took a deep breath before sending a message to Mu Lei. Myriad Emperor World, Heavenly Court. Wang Wei's eyes looked in the distance. The concepts of distance and space were nothing but molded sand to him. As long as more Eternals from different factions appear in the world, the balance mechanism will not be as strict or severe on the Tao opening sect, he thought. He had to prepare for the future. Otherwise, his sect might suffer under the constant schemes of Heavenly Tao. Even if the sect completely controls Heavenly Tao, they cannot escape the situation. On the contrary, it will become worse as true Heavenly Tao might be forced to intervene. Furthermore, I will need many generals and lieutenants to get rid of the 8 parasites as quickly as possible. This generation's geniuses are people of unparalleled talent, luck and Tao heart. It would be a waste not to utilize them. His eyes seemed to scan the entire world. It's a shame for Mo Xingyun. She was on the list to be trafficked. Wang Wei already knew the devilish girl entered samsara, trying to cultivate the 9-extremity foundation. Alright, I will help you hide your karma. If you succeed, don't forget you owe me a great karmic debt. He waved his hand to send a seal to Mo Xingyun's soul in reincarnation. The devil girl tried to hide her negative karma to ensure her reincarnation had no issue. However, Wang Wei could tell her methods were shoddy and would soon be discovered. He removed his eyes from reincarnation, focusing on the world. All the pawns and chess players have been set, so he only needs to wait for the results. Then he will start the next game. There should be a short period of chaos, but that's to be expected, thought Wang Wei. Alright, let's wait for our guest. He slowly walked to the reception room and brewed tea. As expected, a guest arrived at the court a few hours later. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 899. New Buddha. Wang Wei indicated with his hand for Feng Heng to sit down. The tea was already brewed, so he directly served it. You should be busy, so why are you here to see me? I've come for myriad reasons, the first of which is to offer my sincere thanks to the benefactor, replied Feng Heng, his voice containing his deepest sincerity. I'm only repaying my karma. Now, I don't owe anything to Buddhism. Feng Heng nodded as he knew Wang Wei's relationship with their religion was complicated. Personally, he also did not want to get to the bottom of things since it might involve Mother Methreya. As per our agreement, this poor monk is here to offer your share of the merit, continued Feng Heng, handing Wang Wei a cluster of purple and gold lights. Without hesitation, Wang Wei accepted them. The rise of Buddhism in the lower dimension was so quick due to his actions. If he had not used his chat group to secretly spread throughout many worlds across multiple world communities, Feng Heng could never have gathered enough merit to prove the Tao so swiftly. My third objective is a gift for the benefactor, continued Feng Heng, waving his hand to manifest 2 golden books. The Past and Present Buddha Scroll? Wang Wei read D. Tian's memories and learned many interesting things, including a few lost and unique emperor scriptures. However, he did not learn this technique because it was restricted by a power he did not dare deal with. 17:59 Yes. After becoming enlightened, this poor monk felt these books by a power he did not dare deal with. Yes. After becoming enlightened, this poor monk felt these books were destined for the benefactor, added Feng Heng. Of course, Sir Heavenly Emperor, don't have to worry, these are gifts and have no karmic attachments. Wang Wei looked at these 2 emperor scriptures. He always felt these 3 scriptures would be critical to him, but he did not yet know why. I'll accept your gift. Amit Ba, uttered Feng Heng, clasping his hand, showing hesitation in his facial expression. There is more. This poor monk has a selfish request. If it's selfish, don't ask, replied Wang Wei casually. Feng Heng sighed deeply. This poor monk wished his state of mind was pure, devoid of desire and mortal dust. Sadly, this poor monk shoulders a holy mission and cannot separate from this cause. Wang Wei took a sip of his tea. How many monks can truly separate themselves from the world, focusing on enlightening on the Dharma and forsaken worldly desires? I bet these types of people are rare even in the upper dimension. Feng Heng sighed in agreement. What's your request? This poor monk wishes for the benefactor to become the honorary Buddha of Buddhism. Little monk, do you want to tie me to your ship? This is the poor monk's intention, replied Feng Heng as he shook his head. I don't know much about the upper dimension as the benefactor. However, I can tell the benefactor is already involved in the dispute, and a side has been chosen for you. Wang Wei did not say anything and continued sipping his tea. This poor monk is not trying to blackmail the benefactor or anything of the sort. My only desire is to ensure Buddhism's prosperity. Wang Wei still did not answer, so Feng Heng continued, the benefactor does not need to reveal to the world that he's Buddhism's honorary Buddha. More importantly, the benefactor can access some of Buddhism's luck with this position. Wang Wei pondered deeply about Feng Heng's offer. Ever since the revival of Buddhism, he's been thinking about the significance of such an event to someone of Maitreya's level. Currently he has a few theories. The first one is that Buddhism's luck is vital to her. This idea is far-fetched as Wang Wei believed the luck of the lower dimension was not that valuable. However, there is the possibility that the luck of Buddhism will not be completed until the lower dimension's branch is revived. The second theory is that she wanted merit, and with the current political balance of the upper dimension, it's not easy to acquire. Merit is the most magical thing in the universe, almost omnipotent in its utility. However, the same argument as the first theory, such a small quantity of luck should not be worth it for someone of her caliber unless something else is involved. Maybe merit is more valuable to half-step transcendence even in small quantities. Wang Wei has little to no knowledge about such a level, so he cannot know for sure, leaving his theories with too many variables, loopholes and incongruities. I think you should take a look at Snavel. The third theory involved her Tao heart. He knew from Wu Hong the leading cause of Buddhism's downfall was Maitreya. Something went wrong with her during her battle with Taoists, affecting all the Buddhist monks in the Eternal Ascension world. She affected their mind, making them easily turn extreme. Then, faith became the catalyst for Buddhism's destruction in the lower dimension. Meanwhile, the branch in the upper dimension survived because of their close proximity to her and the resources available to them. Wang Wei believes that Maitreya's Tao heart might be completed after the revival of Buddhism. The last theory involved the battle between these two sons. Maitreya's tentacles can now reach the lower dimension, allowing her to better influence the Eternal Ascension world and weaken Supreme Unity's power. All these thoughts flashed in Wang Wei's mind. I don't know for sure whether Maitreya can be trusted, but I know for sure Supreme Unity cannot tolerate my existence. The revival of the Myriad Emperor world will also cause a flourishing period to the entire lower dimension, which in turn will strengthen true heavenly Tao's ability to combat Supreme Unity. Furthermore, he must eliminate these parasites after ascending and allow the upper dimension to return to its peak. So, no matter what, Supreme Unity will not allow him to live. I need protection because even if I can become a paragon as quickly as possible, it will be useless against someone in the half-step transcendence. So, my only choice of survival is to garner her protection. Wang Wei frowned. No, I have a third option. I can introduce Hong Jun, another supposed half-step transcendent, into the game, making more variables. Wang Wei's mind became clear as he knew how to proceed after ascending. His main objective is to do whatever is necessary to buy him enough time to reach the same cultivation realm as these primary chess players. I accept your offer, said Wang Wei, finally focusing on the monk after a few minutes of pondering. I'm sure your wish is for Buddhism to become the national religion of the court. However, that cannot be done now. Rho alpha and alpha s nu omicron v epsilon L omicron m. After making a decision, Wang Wei decided to invest more in Buddhism, even completely turning his back on Taoism. He chose to be no longer as indecisive as before. Some things require calculated risks. As such, he should not let his fear and insecurities prevent him from acting when necessary. However, he would not destroy Taoism in the lower dimension, at least not now. He did not want to force Supreme Unity to do something drastic and forcefully attack him while in the lower dimension. Feng Heng's eyes lit up after hearing these words. He previously had a small hope for his plan to succeed. But now he saw an opportunity and only needed to wait for the correct time. Thank you, benefactor. You won't regret your decision. I hope so. Feng Heng swiftly handed him a token to indicate his status. This poor monk hopes the benefactor can attain the Western Bliss sect's opening ceremony. I will be there, nodded Wang Wei. The two chatted briefly before choosing a day to discuss the Tao. Finally Feng Heng left. Wang Wei looked at the token in his hand. His status as an honorary Buddha has many downsides but also many upsides. My identity cannot be public for now. However, I can use it to get more benefits. His eyes squinted as a cunning and ruthless light flashed. Although Taoism is my enemy, I can still use them as pawns before I discard them. Furthermore, there is still a chance to turn them away from supreme unity. Wang Wei understood that his enemy is supreme unity, but does not necessarily need to be Taoism. If he plays his cards correctly, they can even be turned into allies. There is no need to rush. I can take my time and place more pressure on them. For now, it's still not enough. He dropped his blood on the token and instantly refined it. Immediately, he felt a connection to Buddhism's luck. Although it was young and was recently condensed, Wang Wei could feel its potential. I should probably have warned Feng Heng to be wary of these traitors targeting Buddhism in the other world communities, thought Wang Wei. However, it may not be bad if he suffers a few losses and has to rely more on me. He grinned before suddenly raising his head and looked in the distance. So soon? He muttered. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 900. Swift Decision. Star Beast World, Star-Lord Mountain. As currently the most influential sect of this world, cultivating their 8th Great Emperor and 2nd Eternal Emperor, Primal Star Planet was magnificent. The sheer size of the planet could compare to countless domains in the myriad Emperor world. If any scientists from Earth could see this planet, they would curse heaven because of how ridiculous it is for a planet to be bigger than a galaxy. However, such a thing is more than common in this strange world. Emperor lineages will all create artificial planets as the local for their factions. As such, there are many unnatural locals in this world. No, even the naturally created planets and stars are ridiculously large. Deep inside the Star-Lord Mountain in a secret room, what a brilliant idea, said Mu Lei with shining eyes. However, he quickly controlled his emotions, thinking rationally. What do you think? Is it possible? Asked Tong Ruobing. Mu Lei did not answer immediately, thinking deeply about the feasibility of this idea. Let me see the talisman. He took it from her hand, taking this opportunity to caress her jade-like hands, making Tong Ruobing glared at him. Without any shame, he closed his eyes and focused. A few seconds later, Mu Lei's face paled before opening his eyes with a look of horror. What a monster, he commented. Is he that powerful? Yes, at least 30% Grand Tao source. At least? Can't you be sure? Mu Lei shrugged his shoulders. All I know is I didn't survive a single attack and he did not use much of his strength. Tong Ruobing sighed. So you agree? Rho alpha and alpha s nu omicron v epsilon L omicronum. Why not? With so much benefit there is no reason to disagree. Mu Lei's eyes shone with ambition. A few people were unhappy with his choice of not walking the pure body refining path. However, he did not regret his decision. During the deception trial, he learned of the political situation of the upper dimension. He knew his life would not be peaceful after ascending unless he wanted to bow his head and become someone else's dog. Unfortunately, the pure body refining path only has strength before opening the gate of power, meaning they are easily killed. So, he chose this path to ensure he had a higher chance of surviving after ascending. Furthermore, his choice did not ruin his potential, only delay it. His talent and foundation as a body refiner did not go away. So, as long as he has enough resources, he can quickly temper his body to a level comparable to if he had chosen the pure path. Now, with the heavenly court, he saw his opportunity. His strength will drastically increase if he succeeds, even becoming a potent eternal supreme. Do you want to discuss with the elders before deciding? No need. Some of them might get greedy and do something foolish. Let's come up with an agreement with Wang Wei first before discussing it with them. Tong Ruobing nodded. I will accompany you home to discuss with him. This might not be a good idea, Tong Ruobing shook her head. The situation of the myriad emperor world was special, and the appearance of a foreign eternal emperor might instantly complicate things. I'm not reassured for you to return home alone. Tong Ruobing pondered briefly before coming up with a solution. Can we go somewhere more private? Mu Lei was puzzled by such a weird request but did not ask more questions. He tore apart the space and teleported her to his favorite planet. Once, he almost died from a competitor's sneak attack and had to recuperate on that desolate planet. Then, from that moment on, it became a place he went to when he wanted to be alone with his thoughts. They soon reached a small mansion and Tong Ruobing acted, "Heavenly Emperor, please show your presence." The room's atmosphere immediately changed, becoming more mysterious, majestic, and noble. Then, out of nowhere, Wang Wei appeared in the room. Mu Lei's eyes dilated. A projection? From so far away and with just a name? As an eternal emperor, his name has power, so he could sense it if someone called him countless world communities away. However, the feeling will be very vague and he has to take time to search for the source. However, Wang Wei's ability was instant and without any restrictions. "A little trick," said Wang Wei, who seemed to have guessed his thoughts. "I attach karma to my name, making it easier to detect when people mention it. I sometimes envy the versatility of outlaw Daos. Since we have to pay so much for our Dao, it's normal for them to be more powerful," replied Wang Wei, who sat in the invited seat. "Have you thought about my proposal?" "I have and I agree." "Excellent. I knew you were a decisive man of action." "I never knew you thought so highly of me," said Mu Lei with a smile, and Wang Wei said a few more praises. He analyzed Mu Lei during their interaction as business partners. His conclusion was that the latter was the decisive type of person who would not hesitate to go after what he desires. Furthermore, Mu Lei did not have the deep, hidden pride Heaven Chosen's had, making his mind and actions more flexible. "In that case, let's discuss the details." The two started negotiating the terms of this deal. Before coming here, Wang Wei thought Tong Ruobing would be his greatest obstacle to acquiring as much benefit as possible. However, he was soon proven wrong. Mu Lei knew no shame when arguing, trying to squeeze as many benefits as possible. Their previous dealings were small and not as valuable, so Mu Lei was a gentleman throughout the process. "I think you should take a look at this novel." But now, the man did not show the pride of an eternal emperor. Wang Wei felt he was discussing with a cunning street merchant instead of a dignified eternal being who has transcended the shackles of time and death. After a few hours, they reached an agreement and signed a contract. Wang Wei gave Mu Lei all the information about the court, including how refined the palace was and the god-conferring list. Subsequently, he handed Tong Ruobing the merit-proving method, with the stipulation only she could use it and was forbidden to pass it on to a second person. Finally, Wang Wei's projection disappeared. "What do you think?" "Even scarier in person," replied Mu Lei. "Anything else?" asked Tong Ruobing. "The lower dimension will become turbulent. We need to prepare for the upcoming storm." He could see or detect many hidden things between heaven and earth with his current strength. "Let's go. We have plenty of work to do." Myriad Emperor World, Heavenly Court. Wang Wei looked at the contract in his hand, smiling brightly. He put them away, stood up, and stretched his body. "I haven't slept for a long time, so let's take a nap." He walked to his room to sleep. The next day he woke up because he had another visitor. The person who walked into the throne room was a woman with dark yet sexy makeup. She had a long saber hanging on her side. Despite her beauty, her body had a blood stench embedded deeply into her bones and soul. She immediately knelt on the ground to kowtow. "Ho Qing has seen your majesty, the heavenly emperor." "At ease," said Wang Wei. "If I remember correctly, you're this generation's sect master of the blood saber sect?" This was a devil sect with two great emperors known for their saber Dao, so Wang Wei remembered them. "It's the honor of this lowly servant to be remembered by the emperor." "Lowly servant?" "Yes. Our blood saber sect would like to serve the emperor, swearing to go through water and fire for the court." Wang Wei briefly paused before laughing out loud. "An oath of loyalty from a devil cultivator? I've officially seen it all." "Your Majesty, I mean every word," quickly explained Ho Qing. "Is that so?" muttered Wang Wei without another word. His silence intensified the pressure in the room. Ho Qing's heart was racing and sweat felt on her back. Luckily, Wang Wei finally spoke. "I have been thinking of establishing the position of Divine General and creating numerous Divine Legions under the control of the court. However, Your Majesty, our blood saber sect is willing to become your sharpest sword." Uttered Wang Wei deep in thought. "I haven't made a decision yet. However, you can move the elites of your sect into the court and begin your training. When it's appropriate, I will canonize you." Ho Qing's face on the floor became ugly as she understood the implications. The devil cultivator's action was not enough to appease the heavenly emperor. At the very best, he was no longer as disgusted with them now since they were somewhat useful, but it was far from enough. "As you wish," said Ho Qing, knowing this was the best option for now. She soon left the court to report the result. "These devil cultivators are interesting," muttered Wang Wei. However, they will make fine cannon fodder. He waited in the room as he knew another visitor should be coming in a few hours. This place is a little deserted. Should I choose a few palace maids to make things livelier? Wang Wei shook his head as he knew he could suffer terribly if he did such a thing even if his intentions were pure. In beginning to envy these future heavenly emperors who will fill the court with a harem of 3,000 beauties. He could foresee the degeneration that will happen in the future in this magnificent court he spent so much time and effort to build. Unfortunately, he had no destiny for the harem life. I should begin completing my little pond. It will be a great way to cultivate my fate Dao. He thought about many things he needed to do in the future, including a display of his strength. Otherwise, it won't be long before these people lose their fear of him, becoming bolder and taking risks. He also has to plan for his flesh tribulation. From the knowledge he received from the ancient desolate emperor, this particular tribulation was nasty. So much work to do. Luckily, I have plenty of time. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 901. Attack, is everything done? Asked Wang Wei. Yes, replied Wu Ming with an excited smile. Who knew in just 2 days, this man slaughtered most of the upper echelons of the Origin Rune Palace and enslaved all the rest, turning his Wu clan into the leading faction of this ancient emperor lineage. Thank you for help, added Wu Ming, sighing deeply. He was now one of the few people in the world who experienced the horror of this heavenly emperor. With one talisman he could borrow Wang Wei's power, and Wu Ming had never been so intoxicated. He could slaughter immortals like they were ants. Anyone who stood in his way would be slaughtered or suppressed. During the entire process, one thought kept popping into Wu Ming's mind: run away to keep this power. The temptation of this idea was beyond what people could understand. The experience was worse than during the primordial spirit realm when he had to experience the heart devil. Only 2 things prevented Wu Ming from doing something stupid. He knew this strength did not belong to him and would disappear soon. Secondly, he had a mission to revive the Wu clan. His ancestors should have been the Array ancestors, but the founder of the Origin Rune Palace stole their Wu clan's destiny. So, in his generation he would take it back no matter the means. Without wasting time, Wu Ming handed Wang Wei a token that resembled a small mountain with runes engraved on them. As soon as he held the token, Wang Wei sensed he now had access to the Origin Rune Palace's chi luck. It's so weak and feeble, he commented. That's to be excited, sighed Wu Ming. They have been in decline for too long. They would have long been annihilated if not for the Array Dao luck and Heavenly Dao's protection. Wang Wei pondered briefly. Then it's time to revive them. It would be pointless to condense Cultivation civilization luck if some aspects of it were lacking. Any idea? Asked Wu Ming with excitement. Wang Wei looked at him and in a moment he saw the latter's fate and future. Well, it was your clan's destiny to revive the Origin Rune Palace's destiny and luck. However, the process will take too long, so let's change things. How to begin? First, move some of your members into the court. I need you to build a Totem Warrior Legion. Totem Warrior? Asked Wu Ming, confused. However, some information immediately appeared in his mind. I see. Totem Warriors are the weaponized version of his clan's formation body. It was one of the ideas Wang Wei gave him. A Totem Warrior will engrave formation into their bodies, boosting their abilities and even granting them different powers. Some can even engrave part of an emperor's formation to borrow its power. Our Wu clan already created the Totem Warrior system. However, only the ones with ordinary formations. Wang Wei secretly shook his head. Tong Ruobing is a Totem Warrior as she successfully inherited the power of the Origin Talisman. Meanwhile, Wu Ming, the person who gave these ideas, did not succeed. Don't worry. The court will support you with plenty of resources and talent. Wu Ming felt relieved after hearing this, so he bowed and left to do his duty. A talented person. However, he does not have a single ounce of Emperor destiny. Is this a choice? All geniuses or heaven chosen have Emperor destiny, meaning the luck to become a great emperor one day. However, Wu Ming is different. It seems he has no desire to become emperor, with only the obsession for his clan to regain what they lost. His only ambition is for his descendants to cultivate a potent emperor, but he never thought of becoming one himself. Wang Wei shook his head and no longer paid attention to him. He focused in the distance. They already couldn't resist, he muttered. Western continent. Ao Shen was discussing how to assign his god positions and how to make full use of the current system for their demon race to rise and prosper. Unlike the other factions who decided to take their time to analyze the list and decide, he never stopped in the past few days. Ao Shen already had a framework and had chosen many people for different positions. Suddenly Ao Shen sensed something, and a look of anger manifested on his face. "Open the formation," ordered Ao Shen before disappearing. "But sir, just do it." He knew what the latter wanted to say. The demon race used too many resources the last time they opened the formation to cover the entire continent. Although they have been recuperating since their alliance with the Dao opening sect, they still needed plenty of time to be considered prosperous. Now they would lose even more if they had to do it a second time, delaying the growth of their race. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Kmalas, regardless of how the spoken person or anyone else felt, they followed their leader's instructions and opened the formation. Meanwhile Ao Shen stood above the clouds looking in one direction. "You disgusting maggots really thought I was a soft persimmon?" asked Ao Shen, releasing a tangible killing intent. "Unfortunately, of all the conferred gods, you're the weakest," said a gentle voice. Soon, a young and handsome man appeared in the sky. He had long black hair, a red robe and a very captivating evil smile. Besides his smile, nothing about it made him look like a devil cultivator. However, that's only to the normal eyes. Ao Shen can see the negative karma from this man and even knows the main source. This person cultivates an evil technique that steals women's primordial yin to nourish himself. Tell all the other ants to show up. Their hiding method is child play to my eyes. "Your Excellency, there is no need for this," said the evil young man. "We can negotiate and prevent any need for violence." Ao Shen glanced at him. "The devil cultivator wants to step on me so the world and the heavenly emperor can take them seriously. But I also want to step on you to warn the world to display the strength of the demon race. So, there is no need for negotiation or conversation. I will slaughter all of you as a show of might." Boom. Ao Shen released a terrifying aura, immediately suppressing the young man. Dragons were one of the most powerful and noble creatures between heaven and earth. As such, their aura could suppress creatures of a lower bloodline than them and even influence weaker creatures with no bloodline. "Do it," said the evil young man, and 10 people appeared to surround Ao Shen in groups of 2, with one in front and one behind. A vision of some sort appeared on the first row of people. Ao Shen looked at the person before him. A world of flame appeared above the person's head. A world of water appeared from the person on his west side, followed by a world of earth, wood and metal. The second row individuals mobilized their power as a noble and immortal-like aura emanated from them. Unfortunately, the evil aura hidden deep in these people ruined their immortal ambience. These immortal venerables mobilized their immortal chi to create 5 arrays, each with one of the 5 elements. The arrays then resonate with the internal worlds of these Dao ancestors, forming a unique technique and formation. The evil young man had already disappeared from Ao Shen's sight, but he controlled this operation in the shadows. According to records, 6-star primarchs do have the strength to fight and even defeat eternal emperors. However, they have a weakness: they cannot regenerate or heal as easily as eternal emperors. A cunning light flashed in the evil young man's eyes. "I only need to take advantage of this weakness. I don't need to defeat Ao Shen. I only need to use this Yin 5-element array to block him, slowly injuring him until he compromises with us." The evil young man quickly ordered his people to attack. As such, a green flame dragon manifested in the sky before rushing toward Ao Shen. The proud dragon calmly watched the attack reach him, not hiding the contempt in his eyes. Then a swallowing power emanated from his body, and the green flame dragon disappeared, shocking most of the people secretly watching this battle. "Don't you know there are differences between primarchs just like there are differences between eternal emperors?" asked Ao Shen with a sneer. He was one of the highest tiers of heaven chosen in his generation, so how could he become any regular primarch? Ao Shen made a claw motion with his hand, frowny-faced dragon claw. Boom. The Dao ancestor with the fire internal world spewed a large mouthful of blood, looking at the dragon with incredible eyes. Dao ancestors know their weakness is their internal world. Without it, they cannot borrow the power of the Grand Dao source. As such, they usually have myriad ways to hide and protect their internal world. However, Ao Shen directly ignored these measures and destroyed his internal world with one blow. Although he did not die after its destruction, he instantly lost more than 80% of his strength. As such, the man immediately thought of running away. He felt pain thinking about how much time and effort he would have to take to rebuild his internal world again. The sad part is that he had a fortunate encounter and built a unique fire internal world that made him an insurgent. Now, after rebuilding, he might not be able to return to his previous strength. Unfortunately, the man did not have time to move before Ao Shin made another move. His human eyes turned reptilian, and the man exploded into a blood mist with one gaze. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 902. After Ao Shin killed the first person, he looked at the immortal venerable behind him. He instantly realized the opponent was nothing but an ordinary cultivator and not an insurgent. His purpose was only to add to this formation. The devil cultivator's heart immediately skipped a beat after noticing Ao Shin's gaze. He felt like he was facing an apex predator that truly stood at the pinnacle of the universe. His battle instinct kicked in, and he mobilized the vast immortal chi inside his body. While he tried to, Ao Shin controlled his chaos innate law, now sublimated into heaven law, and released a subtle fluctuation. The face of the devil cultivator changed as he discovered he could no longer control the energy inside his body. Then Ao Shin flicked his finger to generate a terrible force. Boom. The immortal venerable exploded into a blood mist. Ao Shin ensured the death was as brutal as ever and visually stimulating. Dark water of filth, soul-severing sword, earth-devouring mountain, blood-sucking wood. Under the evil young man's command, the formation did not immediately collapse. On the contrary, they went on the offensive, using the remaining elements. Chaos conversation. After these attacks reached Ao Shin, they did not have the desired effects. Instead, he controlled them and converted them into a trace of chaos energy that he stored inside his body. "You're next," he said to the Earth World Devil Cultivator, making the latter pale. Ao Shin teleported before him and hit him with his delicate-looking palm. However, the cultivator knew how terrifying such gentle hands were. Bang! The Devil Cultivator was not immediately annihilated. At the last minute, he summoned an Emperor artifact that resembled a blood bead. The artifact released a blood-red shield that blocked most of the damage to this attack. "It's futile," commented Ao Shin before making a clenching motion. A terrifying force squeezed the Devil Cultivator from the left and right. His shield did not last a second before exploding into a blood pool. Afterward, Ao Shin focused on the latter's inner world. As long as this world is not destroyed, the Tao ancestor is not really dead and can revive itself. So, the dragon opened his mouth and swallowed the entire world, generating more chaos power. Dragon roar, a supreme and noble roar echoed between heaven and earth. It was the sound of a beast declaring its superiority to all sentient beings. With this roar, the Earth Immortal Venerable's body disintegrated into 1,000,000 motes of light scattered in the clouds. At this point, these people realized this plan was a catastrophic failure. So, these cunning devil cultivators immediately chose to run away. "Do you think you can come and leave as you please?" sneered Ao Shin. The space around them suddenly changed. These devil cultivators soon discovered no matter how far they ran or in which direction, they would find themselves a few meters around the dragon. "Lord Ao Shin, there is no need to continue this senseless slaughter," hurriedly said the evil young man. "We made a mistake and acknowledged our fault. If you let us leave, I promise we will send the demon race a hefty compensation. Like I said, you're a warning to the rest of the world. Lord Ao Shin, don't push things too far. A cornered rabbit will bite back even when facing a lion," said the evil young man with a grave tone. "Rabbit? You're not even ants in my eyes." An immense anger flashed in the evil young man's eyes before becoming extremely cold. "You leave me with no choice. Now I'm intrigued. Hopefully your next move can make this battle interesting." The evil young man felt even more humiliated, but he knew there was no point in such an emotion, especially in this situation. "Let's do it," he ordered the remaining survivor. However, no one responded to him even after a few seconds. "Do you think you have a choice? He had already sentenced us to death. No one can leave this place alive if we don't use some drastic measure." The survivors gritted their teeth before rushing toward the evil young man. They turned into red lights before fusing into his body. Soon afterward, his body mutated. He grew to more than 10 meters tall. His upper body was full of so many muscles that it looked disgusting with all the green veins. Furthermore, his upper body was so much bigger than his lower torso. He could be described as having short and thin legs with a tiger's back and a bear's torso. Lastly, the evil young man's eyes were utterly dark, releasing a menacing aura. His intelligence seemed to be fleeting for a moment before regaining consciousness. Blasphemous transformation? I thought his technique was lost during the Devil era. I think you should take a look at Snovel. The evil young man did not answer. This technique was not lost, but the Devil cultivators hid to prevent other factions from using it as an excuse to eradicate them. After all, although this technique can boost strength, most people will lose their minds after using it, turning into mindless killing machines. During the Devil era, countless Devil cultivators used this forbidden technique when fighting the Devil race. One of the most common tactics was to drop a mindless, transformed individual into the camp of the Devil race and let them slaughter until they were put down. However, if you think this is enough to stop me, you're gravely mistaken. This is just the beginning, said the evil young man in an eerie voice that was composed of many individuals. A dark red sword appeared in his hand, releasing a strange fluctuation. Dao will artifact? How is that possible? Muttered Ao Shen, genuinely surprised. Dao will artifacts are something only pseudo and true eternal emperors can leave for their faction. These artifacts are often used to permanently kill great emperors. However, under the balance mechanism of heavenly Dao, the power in these artifacts will slowly dissipate with time. With the foundation of the Devil cultivators, they should not have such a thing. Even if they did, the artifact should have long become useless. I see, said Ao Shen. You guys found a Dao will artifact and used countless human sacrifices to keep the power from dissipating. You hide very well, but this will not change anything. That remains to be seen. The evil young man slashed his sword, creating a black slash, boosting his strength to the limit of possibility with the Dao will artifact. However, Ao Shen calmly raised his palm and blocked the attack. This attack barely reached the threshold of an eternal attack. Moreover, it's an energy-based attack. Ao Shen only took a moment to analyze the situation. After this weird mutation or fusion, his opponent's inner world should have strengthened or sublimated. However, his mind was constantly on the verge of collapsing, making it impossible to control his grand Dao source. So, he converted his inner world into an energy-producing base, using more of an immortal venerable way of battling. Ao Shen frowned as he saw a white mark on his palm. Primarch truly cannot compare to an emperor, he thought. No matter the class, emperors have an extremely high immunity toward energy/chi-based attacks. Furthermore, they can adapt. For example, if an insurgent chi could do damage to an emperor before, they could take some time to absorb that special chi and become immune to it. Unfortunately, Primarchs did not have such an ability. Luckily, my law is chaos. I can integrate everything for my use. Ao Shen focused on his opponent. A strange fluctuation emanated from his body, and he flicked his finger frowny face great cutting technique, swish. Before the evil young man could react, the right part of his body separated from the rest. Dao will, how is that possible? Muttered the Devil cultivator. However, Ao Shen only responded with a sneer. He was a unique Primarch in some ways. Innate demon gods have a powerful body to rely on after becoming Primarchs. However, the same cannot be said for humans. Even with powerful bloodlines, humans are still inferior to innate demon gods in this aspect. Not counting body refiners. So, how to make up for this weakness? The answer is Dao will, also called Law will. Humans who previously acquired the Dui realm can acquire their Dao will after becoming 6-star Primarchs. Meanwhile, innate demon gods do not have cultivation systems and rely entirely on their bloodline and comprehension of their innate laws. As such, they cannot enter the Dui realm. Adding the fact that 99% of them were too proud to cultivate any human cultivation system, Ao Shen's case is indeed rare since he's one of the few innate demons with a Dao will. Okay, I have proven my point. You can die now. No, roared the evil young man as he mobilized his Dao will artifact, even summoning his inner world to surround and protect him. Unfortunately, Ao Shen's attack bypassed his defensive measures and instantly annihilated his body and soul. Finally, the dragon swallowed the remaining mutated inner world. With the acquired chaos power, I can temper my body to a higher level. Greed flashed in Ao Shen's eyes as he wished he could hunt countless immortal tier devil cultivators. The technique he created to convert everything into chaos power is very precious, and he wished he could use it without restraint. Luckily, he could control himself. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 903. The world was in shock after watching this battle. The cultivators and factions of this world had a subtle arrogance that most did not detect. The source was what happened to the heaven-devouring emperor. In their mind, since they could deal with this eternal emperor, the others should not be a problem. Their thinking was if things reached a dire state they could use the same method. Finally, with more than 2 eternal emperors in this world and a few others on par, they subconsciously lowered the value of eternal emperors due to the lack of rarity. Some people even had hidden contempt for the 2 primarchs of this generation. However, after witnessing Ao Shin's battle, they woke up and realized their mistake. They realized eternal emperors were the pinnacle of battle prowess in the lower dimension for a reason. Immortal sovereigns can only restrain eternals, but it did not mean they were superior to the latter. Ao Shin's battle reinstated these people's awe of eternals, making them more prudent when dealing with the 10 conferred gods. Western Continent, Mo Clan, fail, he muttered with a listless look. He did not expect these people to win, only to display their strength and pressure Ao Shin. Sadly, he underestimated how terrifying people of that level are. If the dragon has such power, what about the Heavenly Emperor? The Mo Patriarch shivered as he thought about this. He quickly reined in his thoughts, knowing this was not the time. He received news from Ho Qing, knowing the scheme of the Heavenly Emperor. However, there was nothing he could do, even if he knew. The Mo Patriarch took a deep breath before contacting one of his servants. Order them to begin. A light of ruthlessness flashed in his eyes. Their Mo clan has paid a great deal to survive this catastrophe. He had to mediate between these unruly and murderous devils, ensuring they can be united to deal with the situation. Now he only hoped his actions were worth it. Western Bliss Sect. Feng Heng watched the battle, analyzing Ao Shin's strength and comparing it to his. He was not surprised by the outcome, so his main focus was how to deal with the dragon in case they became enemies. Muttered Feng Heng as he noticed something. Numerous devil cultivators flew from different domains. Their movements indicated some sort of organization. Then he saw these people begin to slaughter low-level devil cultivators. In a few seconds, millions of devil cultivators die in the hands of their own kind. What are they doing? Asked Feng Heng. Then he saw a hint. A black cauldron floated above the continent. Each time someone died, golden lights entered the cauldron. They are killing their own to gather merit? What's the point of doing this? Yin-Yang symbol flashed in his eyes as he calculated the secrets of heaven and earth. I see. The Heavenly Emperor wanted to eradicate the devil cultivator, so they chose to do it themselves, leaving only a few survivors. This method was similar to how someone had to amputate their limbs to save their lives. The higher factions of the devil cultivator chose to abandon the weaker ones for survival. The merit should be an offering to the Heavenly Emperor, showing their submission and dedication. After discovering the truth, Feng Heng's first instinct was to stop everything. However, he chose otherwise as his interventions would ruin the Heavenly Emperor's benefit. I could participate. Although the Western Bliss sect does not have as many members, we can still overwhelm these people as long as I personally take action. Feng Heng frowned. If I choose this path, I would have to hand over the merit assembled to the Heavenly Emperor. He knew better than to dip his finger into someone else's food. Simultaneously, he did not want to participate in vain without benefit. Feng Heng struggled to make a decision. After a few minutes he sighed. This poor monk's destiny is to revive Buddhism and cleanse the Western continent. Now that someone is helping in the process, preventing me from killing too much, I should be glad. So, there is no need to be weighted by losses and gains. Feng Heng's aura became more peaceful, so he closed his eyes and meditated while chanting sutras. D-Clan, Patriarch, what should we do? Nothing. But, our D-Clan needs to remain as low-key as possible during this generation. The room quieted down, and Di Tsong saw the desolate look on these people's faces. He sighed out loud. I think you should take a look at this novel. Siamikronim, our main objective is to find the reincarnation of the young patriarch and see if he wishes to return to the clan. The clan members' eyes lit up. As long as they find Di Tian, their clan can cultivate a heavenly emperor on par with that monster. Di Tsong secretly nodded in satisfaction after seeing their reaction. Heavenly Court, Wang Wei watched the battle with great focus. His eyes could see many things others could not. Heavenly Tao is not the one boosting Ao Shin's innate law, so it should be under the division of true Heavenly Tao. But, if he was a 4-star or lower, would that be Heavenly Tao's job? The world's secrets flashed in his eyes as he peered through fate itself. The answer was yes, Heavenly Tao is responsible for boosting 4-star primarchs or lower. Meanwhile, 5-star and above, corresponding to first class and above, was under true heavenly Taoist jurisdiction. Can I interrupt that boost in any shape or form? With the boost, Primarchs are no way near the level of Great Emperor's Grand Tao Source. Negative, replied Wang Wei. The Heaven Path is another balance mechanism of the world targeting the Emperor Path. So, unless I'm on par with true heavenly Tao, I am powerless. Wang Wei calmly watched the battle end and Ao Shin's departure. Is he close to manifesting his willpower? Well, it makes sense. Ao Shin had to fight multiple imprints in his bloodline trying to take over his body during his Heaven Path tribulation. In the process, he must have tempered his willpower to a high enough level. Wang Wei's gaze switched to the Western continent, and he immediately deduced the Devil Cultivator's plan. The Mo clan patriarch is truly a talent. The fact he could think of such an idea so quickly proved his ability. I am more than happy to receive merit without working for it, thought Wang Wei. And your plan is excellent, but you forgot something: the future. The Devil Cultivators are unstable, so he did not want to leave them any foundations to rise in the future. Wang Wei knew it was impossible to eradicate them completely unless he used extreme means like the absolute beginning Emperor's magic. However, he understood the world needed balance, yin and yang. So, complete eradication of the devil race will destroy that balance. He could foresee that if he took these measures, it wouldn't be long before a Devil Cultivator version of Feng Heng appeared, tasked with the destiny to revive the Devil Cultivators. So, his goal is to clean them up, forcing their faction to start over. He hoped after a couple of generations, when the Devil Cultivators had trained a few emperors and showed signs of reviving, his successor could wipe them again, forcing them to restart over. From now on, it will be the precedent to clean these guys up after they revive. Wang Wei observed the chaos in the Western continent with no desire or intent to stop it. He focused on Buddhism's response. No action, he muttered. It seems he's truly an enlightened monk. So far, Feng Heng has displayed that his mission toward Buddhism is why he could not achieve true enlightenment, allowing his state of mind to reach a higher level. There will be many temptations, thought Wang Wei. If you can resist, you can truly sublimate. If not, you will only be lost in the red dust. After deducing Feng Heng's state, Wang Wei suddenly remembered his ever-changing Tao heart. Maybe I should continue tempering it by incarnating as different lives. As soon as he had the idea, he could not resist. So Wang Wei waved his hand to send countless invisible lights into the world. After proving the Tao heart seems the most useless attribute. But Wang Wei knew this was far from the truth and took it very seriously. Wang Wei stopped paying attention to the world and prepared to rest. However, he suddenly sensed something. My father is out of his retreat? Sooner than expected. He disappeared from the court and returned to the sect. The mountains were not as lively as they used to be because most of the disciples moved to the court to take advantage of the better environment. I told you he would immediately return, said Yu Yan with a smug look as she looked at her husband. All right, you know him better than I do, said Wang Tian with a smile. That's right, and you better not forget it, she added. Son, I've made your favorite food. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 904, How was your retreat? Asked Wang Wei as he took a bite of his red braised pork belly. It was a success, replied Wang Tian with a smile. I already created 3 incarnations. Are you going to let each cultivate the cutting aspect of Sword Tao? I previously thought of this. However, I changed my mind. Wang Tian shook his head. I want each of them to focus on one aspect of basic swordsmanship, elevating it to the highest level before the final fusion. Basic swordsmanship involves cutting, stabbing, parrying, and many more. After his battle with Ji Lanfeng, Wang Tian felt he could improve in other areas, using their essence to make up for his sword-cutting Tao. That's good. However, you seem worried about something? Asked Wang Wei. If it's the issue of resources, you don't have to worry. No, that's not it, replied Wang Tian. I'm worried they won't experience much tempering by staying by my side. I thought of sending them to other worlds, but I always feel there is a better way. Better? In what way? Asked Yu Yan. How do I explain this? I want my incarnations to be challenged, to meet swordsmen on my level to temper their sword Tao, explained Wang Tian. Is there a world where sword Tao is supreme? Let me check. The river of fate materialized in Wang Wei's eyes as he saw countless secrets of the lower dimension. There is a sword overlord world where sword cultivators are the mainstream. Unfortunately, they have been in decline in the past few generations. Decline? Well, it seems the other weapon Daos were unhappy about becoming irrelevant and basically staged a coup. Unfortunately, the final winner of this generation is not a sword emperor. The world's name might even be changed soon, explained Wang Wei. Let me check the lower realm. He paused for a second. Even the lower realm of that community is facing the same issue. I smell a conspiracy. Wang Wei did not think it was a coincidence that Sword Dao faced such a backlash across the entire world community. You could send a few incarnations in these worlds to revive Sword Dao. Indeed, that's a good idea. But that's not exactly what I want, replied Wang Tian. Do you want your incarnation to face countless opponents like yourself and Ji Lanfeng? Asked Yu Yen. Basically. Then have Wire create a world full of swordsman geniuses for you. Send all the incarnations without any memories and have them battle it out like the heaven will. Wang Tian's eyes lit up before looking at his son. Can you do it? Creating a world is simple. However, if you want countless sword geniuses, gathering and condensing the Sword Dao destiny for that world will take some time. It will take longer if you want the world to have a long history and well-developed sword techniques and arts. Lastly, such a world will not have high-level resources for your incarnations. Time is not an issue. Wang Tian was not in a hurry and was willing to wait as long as necessary. Regarding the resources, I only care whether the incarnations will temper their Dao heart and Sword Dao. Once they finish, we can provide the resources needed to reach a complete 9 extremity. That's fine, nodded Wang Wei. One last thing. Is there a chance for me to achieve 10 supremacy? Wang Wei sighed. I've done the calculations. As soon as you enter my unique world, you will die. Wang Wei never dared say the word science and technology openly. Regardless, he was telling the truth. According to his divination and the future he saw, Hongzhen's protection only extended to him and not his family. Di Tian's limit breaker is very rare, so even if we rely on luck, our chances of finding one in the lower dimension are almost zero. However, there is still one last method, but I don't know if it will work. Wang Wei remembered the method to condense his perfect foundation. According to Wu Hong's predictions, he will receive all the materials after entering the dark truth, so there is a chance he could get a limit breaker there. Is it dangerous? Asked Yu Yen. Probably. In that case, no need to take the risk, said Wang Tian firmly. The last thing he wanted was to place his son in danger because of his ambitions. Even if not for you, I need to go to that place. Is it truly necessary? Asked his mother. Yes, replied Wang Wei. If these methods don't work, we can try some alternative methods. I think you should take a look at Snavel. Wang Wei did not have much hope for his father. The 10 Supremacy Foundation requires talent, luck, and destiny. However, based on what he observed, his father simply did not have the luck and destiny for such an achievement. He and Di Tian have taken the destiny or luck of 10 Supremacy in the Myriad Emperor world for the next few eras, not generations eras. Well, there is no need to be too focused on this. If it does not work out, then it doesn't. Wang Tian understood some things are destined for only a few individuals. For example, he would never have acquired the Eternal Emperor destiny if not for his son. Wang Wei secretly sighed. He made numerous calculations and divinations and saw myriad futures. He tried to forcefully alter his father's father into someone destined to achieve 10 supremacy in each of them. However, the result was true heavenly Dao warning and blocking his actions. In one of the simulations, the latter directly annihilated him because he went too far. As such, Wang Wei concluded he had the power to do these things. However, according to the game analogy he used, his level of authority is not enough to touch these domains. Mom, how about you? How was your retreat? I did gain something. However, it's not enough to create an incarnation, replied Yu Yen with some sadness. She has long known her talent was nothing compared to her husband, but she refused to admit she was not as good as that idiot. Don't beat yourself, reassured Wang Wei. That small comprehension should drastically increase your chance of becoming an eternal. She smiled and nodded. Oh, before I forget, can you do a Grand Dao Source baptism for the Yu clan? Wang Wei suddenly paused his chopstick. What's wrong? You should have some time now. Wang Wei sighed out loud. I'm sorry, but I can't. What do you mean? You better explain yourself, said Wang Tian with raised voice. His eyes indicated he was prepared to give his son the first ass-whooping in his life. As for his status, he did not care. No matter how strong and noble his son was, he still came out of him so he could still correct him. Calm down, exclaimed Wang Wei. I'm not saying this because of how I feel about grandfather? Then what reason would you have not to help your mother's clan? Balance mechanism, replied Wang Wei. What do you mean? Are you saying because of how strong the sect is, Heavenly Tao will intervene when I prove the Tao, preventing me from becoming an eternal? Asked Yu Yen, who quickly put many things together. Wang Wei secretly gave her a thumbs up. Although they have been worried about the balance mechanism for a long time, the focus has always been on Li Jun and Yen Liling. Exactly. But what does this have to do with you not helping the clan? I need to do some trickery to ensure nothing happens to you, explained Wang Wei. The first step of my plan is to release news that you had a fallout with the upper echelons of the sect. You will have to leave and return to the Yu clan. Dad can visit, but you cannot easily return to the sect. I will use Deception Dao to deceive true Heavenly Dao the rumors were true, preventing it from interfering with your ascension since you no longer have any connections to the sect and can even be considered to be enemies. Yu Yen pondered briefly. This might work. However, will there be negative repercussions after I prove the Dao? There will, answered Wang Wei. As such, you need to remain extremely low-key during this generation, not intervening in the slightest. You and father can do whatever you please in the next generation, but not now. Why can she act in the next generation? By that time, I would have strengthened other factions and the world to the point that Heavenly Dao should reduce the restrictions on us, replied Wang Wei. I see. However, for this plan to work, Yenner cannot tell the upper echelons of the Yu clan. As such, they should not see you in a positive light. I can bear this little infamy, shrugged Wang Wei. He did not care about such an insignificant thing. There should be no issue in telling them some things after I prove the Dao, added Yu Yen, who could not bear the thought of her clan members hating her son. Do as you please. But make sure they keep their mouths shut and not ruin everything, replied Wang Wei. He did not want anything to ruin his well-crafted plan. Yu Yen nodded. When do I need to leave? There is no rush. We still have plenty of time before we start gathering merit for you. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 905. After the dinner, Wang Wei checked on the rest of his family. His grandfather was in retreat, studying his Fate Transcending Sutra, and learning from it. According to him, he wanted to do whatever was necessary to prepare for his battle against Emperor Nine's sons. Li Jun and Yen Liling were in a similar state, in retreat to prepare for their moment. Wang Ju was in the process of becoming a Dao ancestor. The Lord's Shadow technique allowed Wang Wei to condense a unique Dao seed for her. Furthermore, Wang Wei gave her a few branches from the world tree to stabilize her inner world. Tai Gang was relaxing, waiting for his time to become Dao ancestor and serve Wang Wei one last time. Then it's time for him to reincarnate. After checking on everyone, he returned to the court to also cultivate. He ignored the chaos in the western continent. Furthermore, this was technically his first retreat since proving the Dao. Wang Wei clenched his hand inside the room, feeling the power in his vain frowny face. 31 infant fiend god force. He only needed 9 more to reach the level where he could fight a third-class emperor with his physical prowess alone. I've experienced 2 grand Dao source baptism, and the increase is still so small, complained Wang Wei. During the final battle, he only had 21 infant fiend god force, so an increase of 10. Of course, Wang Wei knew the reason for such a small increase was due to the fact he was in the infant fiend god realm and not the primordial dragon realm. Wang Wei shook his head, redirecting his focus elsewhere. He reinforced the array in the cultivation room. I have a rough idea of how strong I am, but now let's get the exact date. The room suddenly changed as 10 palaces of majestic and noble aura manifested. Anyone who laid eyes on them would be drawn, thinking the answers to all life secrets to their fate were somewhere in these palaces. Interesting. My awakening is the form of my fate palaces, thought Wang Wei before checking his current strength. 35% grand Dao source, an increase of 10%. An emperor's Dao body is a manifestation of his foundation before proving the Dao. The awakening is a display of that foundation for battle. So, since Wang Wei achieved 10 supremacy foundation, he received a 10% grand Dao boost. Next, let's try adding the soul. A terrifying soul power originated from his sea consciousness manifested, adding to his already immense strength. After the soul power appeared, Wang Wei's strength oddly did not increase, remaining the same at 35%. However, he was not surprised. Cultivating and battling in the Emperor realm is odd. Although percentage is used to determine power in realm, the strength increase of 1% is exponential. As such, there is a vast difference in strength between 4 and 5% Grand Dao source, and the same for 69 and 70%. The higher the percentage, the larger the difference. Because of the vast difference, boosts for emperors logically do not make sense. For example, Wang Wei's current strength of 35%, because of the vast difference between 35 and 36%, even if his soul gave a 10% boost in stats, it should not increase his battle prowess. The answers to these questions are one of the mechanisms for the emperor tiers. Some techniques can only boost emperors' basic stats, allowing them to battle opponents of the same strength or percentage. However, another technique called the source technique grants Grand Dao boosts, allowing them to fight above their percentage. One example of a source technique is Wang Wei's force control skill. The battle mechanism for emperors still has many logical flaws. The Grand Dao boost should not stack. Wang Wei's awakening and innate Paragon Soul should not combine to give him a 20% Grand Dao boost since the difference between each percentage is so large. Theoretically speaking, it should be like he can use his awakening to fight an opponent with 35% Grand Dao boost. Then, after the technique ran out, he exchanged his innate Paragon Soul, similar to using card slots. It was the same for his other Grand Dao boost. However, Wang Wei could stack his boosts. He only needed to use his Dao imprint as the medium, allowing his Grand Dao boosts to stack, ignoring the exponential difference between each percentage. Wang Wei activated his Dao imprint, and his strength reached 45% Grand Dao source. Without hesitation, he added another boost to his physical body. However, he soon frowned, realizing he only received a 2% boost. I see. She took into account I would cultivate into the lower dimension, and my physical body would reach 40 Fiend God Force. Wang Wei did not mind the low boost. Of all his boosters, his soul and body were the ones with the most potential. Subsequently, he activated his Dao Will, granting him a boost of 3%. The Dao Will has more potential than that, thought Wang Wei. In a dangerous situation, the boost of the Dao Will can reach 5% if pushed to an extreme, but the backlash will also be terrible even for an eternal emperor. Wang Wei's current strength reached 50%. So, he summoned his willpower manifestation, achieving another Grand Dao boost of 10. I think you should take a look at this novel. Is this the strength of 60% Grand Dao source? I can easily destroy dozens if not more world communities with one attack. This thought was scary. Each world community contained millions of worlds, yet he could destroy all life and matter in these places with a wave of his hand. But it's not over, said Wang Wei as he summoned his Proving Dao artifact, his power reaching 65%. I feel a little unstable. Wang Wei was very sensitive and discovered his stacking ability from his Dao imprint showed signs of instability. I should probably take time to study the imprint and discover the secrets of this stacking, he commented before continuing. He activated his source technique force control skill. His power reached 67% Grand Dao source. Without the level of Heavenly Dao control, the boost is only 2%. Doesn't matter, it should be completed soon. One of the reasons he captured Heavenly Dao and forced it into a human body was to better observe how it operates and controls laws. So, his force control skill will soon succeed. However, I have a feeling even if it's completed, my strength will only reach 69%, not reaching the level of Empyrean. He knew his feelings were true. In the future, even after his base's strength of 25% increases, it will be difficult to cross the 70% of Empyrean. There should be many reasons for this. The first one is the vast difference between tier 11 and 10 in the Emperor path. The second and main one should be the restrictions on the lower dimension. True Heavenly Dao does not even allow Dao rulers to appear, let alone an Empyrean even if it is just battle prowess. Wang Wei frowned as he realized he would need to hide his strength and not display all of it. Otherwise, true Heavenly Dao might immediately exile him into the upper dimension. Well, it doesn't matter much. I should be invincible in the lower dimension. It's a shame I cannot immediately slaughter Old Man Nether. Wang Wei considered two people in the lower dimension to be his true enemy, Old Man Nether and the possibility of Death Reverence showing up as he destroyed the corpse-selling sect. No, a third possible enemy is the old gods behind Yilanqing and the Abyss Gap. Something unexpected might come from that weird locale. Okay, let's use the 300 years to cultivate the body, thought Wang Wei as he waved his hand to change the time ratio between his room and the outside. Then he took the Immortal tier level of the Ancient Desolate Body refining scripture to read and analyze. While he was in retreat, the outside world was in a semi-turbulent state. A terrifying slaughter took place in the Western continent. Large-scale emperor wars took place as these devil cultivators slaughtered each other. Feng Heng, who did not want to intervene, had to because the fights began to involve mortals, so he had to take action to save them. In the eastern continent, the top emperor lineages went to put pressure on the ancient clan. They had a disagreement but no one fought yet. However, the knowledgeable ones knew it was only a matter of time before the sword-casting villa intervened. By then, things will become more complicated. In the southern continent, everything seemed fine as Su Shi did things in a more diplomatic way. However, news of what happened to the Origin Rune Palace was leaked. The news was shocking at first, but no one truly cared until they learned Wu Ming began to live in the Heavenly Court. Some factions began to worry about the overwhelming advantage the latter would have after using the excellent cultivation state of the court. As such, some people began to be tempted, wondering whether they should also join. In the northern continent, Ao Shen was low-key after his victory. He used the time when people's eyes were focused on the west to revive the demon race as much as possible. Furthermore, he is also trying to find a way to become an emperor. Typically, he would not have such a thought and was ready to reincarnate. However, after saying the anomaly of this generation, he believed there might be a way for him. The sea race was also low-key despite the grievances they felt. As such, no one knew whether they were truly laying low or biding their time for something else. The gears of the world turned, waiting for the second court meeting. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 906. Warning: Body Horror. Wang Wei held the ancient desolate body refining scripture, reading the Immortal tier sections. Although he has read it dozens of times, he now understands this technique more deeply after achieving his current strength. No wonder Desolate One could not cultivate it to the highest level, he commented. According to his calculations, this technique can be cultivated to the 6-star pre-march level or eternal level strength, corresponding to 70 infant fiend god force. However, the latter part of this technique requires too many resources, and some aspects are too theoretical and not very applicable. Should I immediately change to the 12 fiend god revolution? Thought Wang Wei, who discovered another flaw of this technique: it no longer perfectly fit. The Immortal level had two parts: soul modification and primordial god veins. Soul modification is to refine a unique emperor soul called Desolate Soul. Finally, fuse the soul and the body, elevating it to a higher level. However, Wang Wei cannot acquire the Desolate Emperor soul since his innate Paragon soul is of higher quality. Finally, his soul and body are already linked through his spirit particles. Although I cannot use the soul modification, I can learn from it, analyzed Wang Wei. I can create a way to transform spirit into essence, using my soul to nourish my body. This method was the best path for him to use his potent soul energy to temper his fleshly body. As for the primordial god veins, they are worth cultivating, thought Wang Wei. This technique requires condensing a unique energy or power vein in the body, gifting the flesh with immense speed, defense, strength, resilience, and even divine abilities. The only downside is the amount of resources needed to condense each vein. Furthermore, the number of veins is theoretically infinite. Once I acquire my human fiend god bloodline, I can change these primordial god veins into fiend god veins, making them more powerful, commented Wang Wei, whose eyes lit up. He also plans to renovate this technique, making it more on par with the state of the lower dimension. Wang Wei remembered Yin Zhen's obsession with having the best body refining technique. Although Wang Wei did not focus too much on such a thing, he still wanted his sect to have the advantage. He already innovated the technique in the mortal realm by adding the black hole acupoints aspect, so let's do the same for the immortal realm. I will need to get some unique resources before I cultivate. Before then, let's pass the second flesh tribulation. He closed the book and removed his clothes. His ancestor, the ancient Desolate, did not tell him much information about the tribulations of the true power Dao realm. However, he gave him some precautions and advice. The latter told him to make sure to remove his clothes and all other items on him when passing the second trial. Wang Wei still remembered the fear that flashed in that man's eyes as he gave him that advice. At that time, he wondered what made such a paragon behave in such a manner. So, he asked his wife, and she only told him he was lucky to have elders to watch out for him. Furthermore, she had the same fear flashed in her eyes. Since then, Wang Wei has been curious, what kind of trial Grand Dao made that even traumatized all these paragons? Well, today he was about to find out. So he removed his clothes, his space ring, and the ornament holding his long hair. Then, based on his ancestors' advice, he laid flat on the floor. According to the latter, this position was the most ideal for passing the test, better than sitting in the lotus position. Finally, Wang Wei summoned the test. He sensed a terrifying will or power descended on him. He took a deep breath, trying to calm down. After a few seconds, his body metallized, rapidly turning into metals. According to the information in his head, he only needed to control his body and prevent this process. Wang Wei had great control over his body, so such a test did not affect him much. Although the unknown power metallizing his body resisted, it was futile. As such, after more than an hour, he passed the first part of the test. Then he received a confirmation on whether to continue or postpone the second part. Ancient Desolate told him there were no rewards for passing the test together. However, he told him the hardest part was the third part, but the scariest part was the second one. He told Wang Wei he could take some time to prepare for the second test. Wang Wei did not hesitate to continue. Immediately, something terrible happened, something horrifying. A large tongue of more than 40 centimeters grew out of his forehead. However, this was just the beginning. All his luscious silver-gray hair turned into more than 100 tongues. An immense fear overwhelmed Wang Wei's mind as he noticed the anomaly of his body. He knew these changes were not an illusion but his body mutating. He would turn into an abominable monster if he did not do something. Wang Wei tried not to panic, but the fear in his mind seemed to have been boosted by an unknown power. I think you should take a look at this novel. As such, with each passing second, the fear of becoming an unrecognizable and uncontrollable monster overwhelmed his spirit. So, he had to mobilize his willpower to overcome the fear. Then he concentrated. This test is basically about control and overcoming fear. I need absolute control over my body to prevent my cells from mutating and splitting faster than cancerous cells. Control was his expertise. As such, after overcoming the fear, Wang Wei controlled his body, changing the tongues in his body back to their former parts. Afterward, he focused on the second mutation already appearing in his body eyes. He had thousands of eyes scattered all over his upper and lower torso, some of which manifested in places they had absolutely no business in being there. He used subtle manipulation of his body to close these eyes. However, as soon as he turned a part of his body back to normal, another part had one or a pair of eyes. Without hesitation, he accelerated his speed and controlled his entire body. Wang Wei used all spirit particles connected to multiple cells in his body to ensure no mutation occurred. Alas, his method proved futile. The higher power controlling this test told him it was not over. A strange and vile liquid began to squirt from his ears, followed by his nose. Was it bile, vomit, blood, an unknown fluid of the body, or a combination of everything? He did not have an answer because the stench of that liquid exponentially increased the fear in his mind. Luckily, he reacted swiftly and controlled his mouth. Otherwise, this test would have surely scared him to death. Wang Wei focused as he knew something internally must have been disrupted for his body to have such a mutation. So he swiftly found it and fixed the issue. Alas, the horror was not finished. The mutation suddenly accelerated as if someone had given it steroids. In less than a second, he turned into a flesh monster. His body grew to more than 5 meters tall. He was so fat that he probably weighed more than 5,000 kilograms. His internal organs were not where they were supposed to be. Some of his bone overgrew, breaking his skin. His eyes seemed to be at the bottom of his body instead of the top, and his muscles turned into fat or some substance of the same ability, and his blood vessels were on the outside, turning his body red. The previous suave and handsome heavenly emperor was gone, replaced by a horrifying flesh creature. Wang Wei's eyes flashed with great fear somewhere south of his body. He wanted to bite his tongue and use pain to confront the fear. However, ironically, he did not even know whether he had teeth or a tongue. Wang Wei's focus reached the pinnacle as he pushed his force control skill to the limit. He slowly and methodically changed his body into the previous self. Immediately afterward, he condensed a mirror as he caressed his handsome face. Wang Wei never considered himself narcissistic despite his heavenly handsome face. However, the horror of his previous body was simply too much. Do I want to continue? For the first time he hesitated. Since when have I ever been fearful? He sneered before continuing. The next stage of the test was easier for him. His body turned into a dragon, and he had to return to his human form. Wang Wei understood if the previous test only reached the limit of controlling cells, this one was a control of genes or bloodline. As such, after transforming into a dragon, he ignored the intense voice in his head that told him he was a dragon and should remain as such. controlling his body to return to his former self. So this is also a test of the self, commented Wang Wei. If he had lost himself and believed he was a dragon, he would have failed the test and died. After his successful transformation, the third part of the test was not finished. Wang Wei's body rapidly disintegrated into trillions upon trillions of atoms or particles. As he watched his body disperse, the fear of death overwhelmed him. Wang Wei knew he would truly die if he failed the test, and even his control over his existence could not help him. So, he hurriedly controlled these atoms that make up his body and reassembled them one by one, particle by particle. This part of the test was easier for him because of the force control skill, so he only needed to focus on passing the spiritual aspect, which was not easy. Each test is designed based on an individual's level of willpower, so Wang Wei's test could be called nightmare-level difficult for anyone else. This tribulation aims to push every body refiner beyond their limits, tempering their flesh, will, control, and spirit. Only after meeting these requirements could they become entities on par with paragons, who controlled the Grand Tao Source. Phew, this nightmare was over, muttered Wang Wei, who finally understood why he was told to remove his clothes and jewelry. If these things remained, they could have fused with his flesh and become part of the mutation. No wonder these two felt so much fear. This tribulation was truly traumatizing. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Wang Wei closed his eyes, adjusting his state. He overviewed all his knowledge about essence, spirit, and qi, and combined them with the immortal part of the ancient desolate body refining scripture. In a short period he created a method of transforming spirit into essence. He even went further and created a method of transforming qi into essence. Unfortunately, his current body requires an extremely high level of qi or energy to have the slightest effect. Regardless, Wang Wei already planned a trip to the source qi space, so maybe he could find something useful to him. After succeeding, he gathered a large amount of his soul energy and transformed it into a power that tempered his body. In the process, Wang Wei furthered the connection between his soul and body. Previously he only had 269 trillion spirit particles, but his body contained more cells than that. Now he ensured all his cells had a trace of his soul energy. Time passed and Wang Wei continued his cultivation. Crack. Rho alpha and alpha s no omicron v epsilon L omicron m. At one point, the sound of bones cracking and his muscles snapping like a whip echoed in the room. Finally reached 40 infant fiend god force, commented Wang Wei. The amount of energy this took does not seem to be worth it. Wang Wei knew how valuable soul energy was. One of the many barriers preventing people from becoming paragons is their souls cannot reach the quality and quantity required. However, he did not have this problem. Before reaching the peak of the Empyrean realm, he had already met the soul and luck requirements. He had faith in himself to reach the Grand Tao Source requirement, so he only needed to learn the other requirements and prepare for them while in the Empyrean realm. As such, Wang Wei did not want to squander his soul energy. According to his calculations, he might even have enough reserve to reach the peak of the Paragon realm, so there is no point in sacrificing his bright future for a quick improvement in the true power Tao realm, especially when he has other options. I can use my soul as an auxiliary aid for my flesh but not directly improve it, concluded Wang Wei. After making a decision, Wang Wei did not waste time and condensed his first primordial god vein. The process took some time since it was his first one. But soon enough, a new energy system was added to his fleshly body by condensing a special vein. Wang Wei clenched his fist and felt a small increase in power. Although he still had 40 fiend god force, his power did increase. These veins can increase strength, defense, speed, stamina and other stats. They have potential. However, the method of condensing them is very limited. Wang Wei felt the consent of primordial veins was brilliant and gave his ancestors the credit he deserved. However, he did not like the method used to condense them. I would love to see the updated version after Ancient Desolate became paragons. Well, that's assuming he did not change to another technique. Wang Wei felt it was unlikely since the Ancient Desolate used the body refining scripture as his emperor's scripture. I have been considering upgrading the zodiac techniques to keep up with my current state and realm. I can condense them into special primordial god veins, elevating their powers. Furthermore, when I turn these veins into fiend god veins, they will experience a second baptism and sublimation. Wang Wei's eyes lit up as he thought of a way to improve the Ancient Desolate body refining scripture. Condensing unique veins. The ancient desolate emperor seems a little too obsessed or focused on the desolate concept of this technique. So, it requires desolate energy to condense a desolate emperor's soul or primordial god vein. However, I can add variety to this technique. Stars are already a part of it, so I can condense God's veins based on the zodiacs and the constellations. I can condense God veins from other innate demon gods. For example, if I get Aoshin's blood, I can condense a Chaos Dragon vein. I could get some primordial energy from Su Shi and condense primordial veins, Golden Buddha vein from Feng Heng, and 5 sacred beasts from Huo Feng Huang. The possibility for this technique was endless. Aha, I'm truly an unparalleled genius, thought Wang Wei with a smirk. Now, how do I get these things from these people? He could secretly steal them with his ability and no one would notice. He could directly ask and few would resist. No, I can use these things in the next court meeting to establish a better precedent of communication, fair trading, and improvement for everyone. Wang Wei patted himself on the back, thinking how he was such a dedicated heavenly emperor. Everything he does is for the betterment of the world and the prosperity of his new era. Well, I still need some resources. Wang Wei disappeared from his room and appeared outside one of the forbidden lands, the Blood Earth. Without hesitation he entered. I think you should take a look at Snavel. The world around him changed, the sky was dark and the earth was dyed red. He saw countless creatures that seemed composed entirely of blood. Are those the Blood Azura? With one look, he knew these creatures had nothing to do with the Azura race. He calmly watched as a few people remained in this place's periphery, fighting these creatures for opportunity. A few cultivators had blood-related techniques and would absorb these creatures. Simultaneously, these cultivators became the nutrients of the Blood Azura once they were killed. I remember my mother and father were stuck in this place and almost died. With my father's strength, such a place would not be much of a threat to him unless he entered in the early stages of cultivation. Someone must have schemed against him. Wang Wei took a moment and used his time Dao to see that past event. As expected, something abnormal occurred. This place was not very welcoming of the Wang clan bloodline, so these creatures became mad as soon as they saw him and chose to overwhelm him with sheer numbers. Everything is connected, sighed Edward. Their ancestors stole something from this place. Billions of years later, his father and mother fell in love while fighting desperately in this place. If not for what the ancient desolate emperor did, maybe he would not be born today. Fate is truly a wonderful yet scary thing. Wang Wei shook his head before entering the core area of this forbidden place. He entered another dimension and found himself in a large hall. He first noticed traces of writing on the walls and ceiling. However, someone or something removed whatever was recorded. The second thing he noticed was 2 large blood pools on each side of the hall. He was not surprised by their appearance. He already knew the Blood Azuras existed to gather blood, soul, and energy for the owner of this place. That's why the outer area is not as dangerous as the core and would open once in a while. It's also why there are many rare opportunities for cultivators in this place, and many emperor lineages will treat its opening as a secret realm. Wang Wei walked to the end of the hall, where he saw a colossal creature sitting on a throne with a small bead releasing energy into his body. The towering creature looked humanoid except for his red skin and shining lights in his chest that resembled stars, claws, and horns. The primordial god opened his enormous mouth to swallow the small bead, stopping his recuperation. He opened his eyes with the plan to call Wang Wei a thief's descendant. However, he stopped before a look of horror appeared on his face. You've actually achieved the legendary Tenfold Battle Realm? Tenfold Battle Realm? The primordial god had a look of contempt on his face. His expression basically told Wang Wei he was an ignorant boy. However, the latter did not care. The moment the latter said the word, Tenfold Battle Realm, he could have deduced the secret. Better yet, he could use his time Dao to see the infinite possibility of the future and know how this conversation is going to go. Or he could use his Fate Dao to know exactly what the latter would say. With his strength and mastery of Fate Dao, his conversations could be like this since probably few people in the lower dimension could block his powers. However, Wang Wei knew how such a thing could change or twist his mindset. Conversation even with his friends and family would become pointless since he already knew the final outcome. After living like this for a long time, his mindset would be twisted as he became colder and more indifferent. He would start to believe all sentient beings are poor creatures imprisoned by the shackles of fate. And as one of the few exceptions, he should not associate with these people. As such, he never used his ability in this manner unless necessary. The primordial god soon realized who he was speaking to, so he changed his attitude and answered politely, There is a 50% difference between eternal emperors and empyreans. Every 5% is one-fold, explained the primordial god. So, it's a way to determine an emperor's ability to fight above his grade? Correct, nodded the giant creature. In this era, a one-fold battle realm is considered an eternal supreme. Was it different in your era? Asked Wang Wei, sensing the sneer and mockery from this creature. Yes. In my time it requires threefold to bear that tile. Threefold equates to 35% Grand Dao source. The requirement is indeed higher than the current 25%. What was the highest record of your time? Sixfold, replied the primordial god, lost in his memories. No one believed a higher level could be achieved. Even the percent who achieved such a result had extenuating circumstances. I see, nodded Wang Wei. Your era was truly glorious despite being drought with war and conflict. However, it will still pale in comparison to mine. The primordial god did not comment on this statement. All he cared about was how to deal with the current situation. His previous plans were useless before a tenfold battle realm. His mission was on the verge of succeeding, so he did not want to die yet. Chapter 9-10. Wang just fate primordial desolate sighed, resigning to his fate. Then, without hesitation, he plunged his left hand into his chest and dug it out. He left a few blood essence in the heart before handing it over. His aura drastically diminished, and his red face appeared somewhere purple. The shining stars in his chest diminished as if they had lost their luster. Wang Wei held the heart in his hand, feeling the immense energy inside. Then he felt bored. The Forbidden Lands were once feared, and renowned places used as cautionary tales even for great emperors. When he started his cultivation journey, one of his main ambitions and goals was to deal with them. However, after basically bullying Primordial Desolate, he felt things were lackluster. This primordial god's power should be between 40 to 45% Grand Dao source, so he should have made a great challenge. Unfortunately, he could destroy the latter with one finger. There is no point in feeling this way. I have today's success not because of a certain innate talent but due to years of hard work, dedication, planning, and a little bit of luck. Wang Wei no longer focused on such a thought. He placed the heart away before focusing on Primordial Desolate. He wondered what position to grant him in the council. His first thought was to make him a divine general. However, he gave up that idea since the latter had no troops under his banner. Furthermore, it was not wise to immediately force the revived innate demon gods to work for the court. He will give them some time to adapt and learn of the situation. Then he will try to incorporate them into the court system. Anyways, I can still use Primordial Desolate as a thug, thought Wang Wei. In that case, I could try granting him one of the artificial god positions. Wang Wei has been contemplating the creation of artificial god positions inspired by Western mythology from Earth, like the god of blacksmith. The blacksmithing concept does not involve heavenly Tao, so no world source is involved. Blacksmithing falls in the category of the god of earth and the god of metal, revolving around the metal or ores used for the process. Finally, the god of flame is also involved. However, Wang Wei wanted to try something new by creating the blacksmith god position. His idea is that this god would use its power to reduce the resources required to train a blacksmith. Whether it's mortal blacksmithing or cultivator's artifact refining, countless resources are used to train a qualified weapon maker. If the blacksmith god could bless these people's refining process and reduce the resources needed, then Heavenly Tao could save more world source reserves. Additionally, the luck of this era can increase with the development of civilization. A position like blacksmith god can allow mortal metallurgy and technology to develop, thus increasing the prosperity and destiny of the entire myriad emperor world. If this plan works, I can create highly sought-after positions like the god of alchemy, array, talisman, and weapon refiner. The training of any of these professions requires an exuberant number of resources. However, with these divine positions, Wang Wei will walk the path of resource preservation and management. Although the world will not lack resources after he reverts the environment to innate, it's still a worthwhile effort to prevent wastage and better management. Since the plan is ready, let's try it out. The conferred god list appeared in his hand, and he used his power to modify this unique artifact. From now on you will be the god of blacksmith, declared Wang Wei. However, Primordial Desolate was confused as he did not understand this weird position. He had heard of the court and the god positions. Although he was not clear on the details since he was not part of the meeting, he was still knowledgeable about the subject. However, he was genuinely confused about this odd position. Alas, Wang Wei did not explain to him but waved his hand to teleport his primordial god to a place in the court where he could rapidly recuperate. He ensured to give him one of the best spots so he could heal faster. Such high-level and rare resources must be treated with care. Subsequently, he focused on the blood earth, thinking about how to deal with it. This place would make a great trial for the sect, he thought. As long as he sealed one of Primordial Desolate's hearts into this place and surrounded it with a formation that provides it with energy, more blood Azura can continue to be born. Then, the sect's disciples can kill these creatures and absorb the energy they release, tempering their bodies. This place will become a haven for body refiners while regular disciples can use it to temper their bodies during the body refining and divine body realm. This place could even give birth to immortal tier blood Azura, allowing more ancestors to temper their bodies. A few more insurgents could be born from it. He nodded in satisfaction with this idea. So, he activated his space Grandao source to move the entire blood earth back to the sect. From now on, the second forbidden land of the Myriad Emperor world was gone after the Western Pure Bliss land. The world took notice of this change and did not take long to guess who acted. Factions with eternal battle prowess began to ask their representative whether they could also deal with the being inside this place. They received different answers and acted based on these answers. However, none of this mattered to Wang Wei, who returned to his cultivation. He absorbed the primordial god's heart to condense more veins, drastically increasing his fleshly body. 47 Infant Fiend God Force, muttered Wang Wei as he clenched his hand and felt the veins inside his body. Better than I anticipated. He was satisfied with this retreat. Although the heart will slowly have no effect on him, he can use other resources to refine a pill with the heart as the core material. By then he can continue to enjoy the benefits. Wang Wei then checked outside. There are still 10 years before the second meeting. Wang Ju is out. He closed the array in his room and summoned her. Swish. A woman dressed in black appears in the room, kneeling on one knee. Sect Master. Get up, nodded Wang Wei. How is the result? As you expected, my base strength is on par with an Eternal Emperor. However, I can enter a state I called Fate Battle Mode, where I can borrow more of your power. Oh, how strong can you reach? 35% Grandao source for a short duration, 40% if I go all out with severe backlash, and 50% if I sacrifice my life. As Wang Ju said these words, the awe in her heart was indescribable. She knows she did not inherit the full strength of the sect master, yet she was so powerful. The strength is not bad, he thought as he gazed at her inner world. It contained a unique seed at its core emanating his fate power. The power can perfectly blend with Wang Zhe's Shadow Dao. From now on, you will be the guardian of the sect. Yes. You seem hesitant. You don't want to? Asked Wang Wei. That's not it, I was just hoping to continue following you in the upper dimension, replied Wang Ju. Wang Wei looked at her before looking in the distance. It saddens me to say, but you can no longer keep up with my step. Wang Zhe's eyes dimmed. Maybe in the future, when I have established a foundation and reached the level where I have fewer restrictions, I will summon you to serve at my side. However, now you have to protect the sect for me. Wang Wei was not just saying these words to appease her. He has a feeling that people he can trust will become extremely valuable to him in the future. As such, he will not abandon Wang Ju because she is weak. However, it will be a while before they can reunite after he ascends. I know you're not a fan of the name Shadow 3, you can take the name Fate Shadow 1. Thank you. You should know of your next mission? Yes. I will spread the Fate Shadow Guards to as many world communities as possible in the shortest time possible. With your current strength there should be no problem. But even if there is, you only need to mutter my name and I will come to your aid. Wang Wei's warning was superfluous. They had a deep karmic connection, so he would immediately know if she was in danger. I will keep that in mind, replied Wang Ju, who felt relief after hearing these words. She took out a talisman and handed it to Wang Wei. This is my replacement at the headquarters while I am away. You can ask him for anything, he's very qualified. Wang Wei checked the information and a slight surprise flashed in his eyes. He knew this person, the little assassin he met with the innate space technique. If he remembered correctly, his name was Zhang Jing. The latter left his post in the Shadow Slayer Temple after helping the Fate Shadow Guards from better infiltrating the place. Then he entered the headquarters and rapidly climbed the ladder until Wang Ju recognized his talent and ability. It's a shame, thought Wang Wei. He felt it would have been better if the little assassin had a protagonist template or destiny and his sister was an unparalleled genius. Well, I trust in your judgment. If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Then he focused on watching how the war in the West proceeded. These weak emperor lineages were ruthless and did not want to behave like pigs waiting to be slaughtered. They formed an alliance, resisting their destruction at all costs. These devil cultivators would have suffered even more if not for Feng Heng's aid. As for why he intervened and helped these devil cultivators, it's because the battle was getting out of hand, forcing him to use way too much power to heal the space. Additionally, the war affected mortals, so he wanted it to end as swiftly as possible. Of course, despite his intervention, Feng Heng was smart enough not to touch the merit the devil cultivators prepared as an offering for the heavenly emperor. You were smart enough not to touch what's mine, but some people do not have this wisdom, muttered Wang Wei with a sneer. He snorted, his booming voice echoing in every cultivator's mind, followed by a dozen individual screams. In an instant, myriad cultivators, including a few insurgents, died in different factions in the Western continent. Wang Wei did not blame the remaining people for the faults of a few. He accomplished his goal of dealing with the devil cultivators without even lifting a finger himself. Now, the remaining devil cultivators have restrained themselves while also becoming great thugs under his court. The Western Bliss sect restrained the D clan, preventing their power from drastically increasing after the cleanup. So, he is more than satisfied with the final outcome. Feng Heng has been a very cooperative ally. Should I give him more benefit or reward? Thought Wang Wei before shaking his head. During the opening of the Western Bliss sect, he sent a clone and gave the latter an excellent gift. So, there is no need for that now. Wang Wei looked at one of the rooms in the court, which was filled with golden spots. With the devil cultivator's merit, it should be enough for another 5% increase. Wang Wei smiled in satisfaction. This is why he created the court. Although it will become harder to increase his cultivation, he can breeze through the early stages of the Emperor realm. Wang Wei then checked his two legions, Blood Saber and Totem Legion. Their training was going well. They improved dramatically with the luck blessing of the court. I need to refine a Dao Source seed for Tai Gang as soon as possible so he can start training the Undying Legion. As for Li Jun's Slaughter Legion, they have their own purpose to train for. Wang Wei had many things to do, including cultivating new Dao ancestors and immortal venerables for the sect. However, he also wanted to see if he could create better ones after his cultivation and battle prowess crossed into the Empyrean level. After finishing his checkup, Wang Wei walked into the central area of the court. He entered a special and very restricted area, gazing at an old man dressed like a beggar sitting cross-legged in the room. After his arrival, the beggar opened his indifferent eyes. "How is it? Are you satisfied with this power?" "More than satisfied," replied the beggar calmly. "If not for your actions, I would never have an opportunity to practice Heaven Dao to such a height." "I'm sensing you have questions," said Wang Wei as he sat before the beggar. "Why don't you begin by introducing yourself? I've known for so long but still don't know your name." "People in my generation called me Old Man Tianji." Wang Wei gave him a weird look. The name, Old Man Tianji, is often used in novels about his past life for people who are good at divination and calculating heaven's secrets. Maybe this name has some other mystery. "So, what do you want to ask? Why did you fuse Heavenly Dao into my body? Your court does not need Heavenly Dao to have a carrier to function normally." "There are many reasons I chose this method," explained Wang Wei. "Firstly, I wanted to see how a Heavenly Dao would control laws via a human proxy. It's a great learning opportunity. Secondly, according to my calculations, Heavenly Dao will be easier to control, manipulate and restrict in this form. Finally, I felt Heavenly Dao was too rigid when doing certain things. Sometimes, it needs a certain humanity or ingenuity in its actions. However, it's incapable of doing so, so I give it this ability." His hope was for Heavenly Dao to have a small balance of humanity and ingenuity while keeping its core essence as a program. In other words, a true artificial intelligence. "Are you afraid it will acquire sentience?" asked Old Man Tianji. "I don't," replied Wang Wei. "And you know why. Just like the absolute beginning magic, the Sword Empress left a powerful sword power in the lower dimension that especially targeted Heavenly Daos, preventing them from gaining sentience. The name of her scripture is Heaven Slashing Sutra, and she fulfilled its title. I know you're strong, but I still wish to warn you, said Old Man Tianji, his facial expression as blank as a white piece of paper. The Heavenly Emperor karmic position is one of the highest secrets of heaven and earth. Your actions of blatantly stealing it and revealing it might have consequences. Wang Wei knew what he meant. The Heavenly Emperor karmic position existed as a last resort mechanism. Once a world faces true catastrophe, Heavenly Tao will manifest the position as a last attempt to protect the world. The three karmic positions existed for a specific situation. The Heavenly Emperor will appear when the laws of heaven and earth are affected. If they are incomplete, destroyed, or infected, then it's the job of the Emperor to return things to the way they were. The human Emperor will appear when the protagonists of heaven and earth, whatever the race or civilization, are threatened and on the verge of extinction. Finally, the Earth Emperor will show up when samsara is affected, and the yin-yang balance of the world is tilted to the yin side. There might indeed be some consequences, but not as severe as you said. Wang Wei discussed with Heavenly Tao before taking the position. However, his revealing the information to Mu Lei is indeed considered a crime. Furthermore, more people will know about this secret once he starts to expand to other world communities. However, he renovated the Heaven Emperor position and made it better. The entire situation of the conferred God list and conserving world source is all his idea. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 9:12. Above Primordial Chaos, Terminus Haven. The Adjudicator of Fate sat on a round table with 5 unfilled spots. He looked in the distance, a little distracted. His short gray hair was slightly longer than the last time Wang Wei saw him. However, it was still compared to Cultivator's usual long hair. The place he waited was odd. Everything was all white except for countless dots and lines that kept moving like small worms. At the center of this chaotic space was a purple palace that appeared magnificent on the outside but contained one room bathed in gold and white. While waiting patiently, the adjudicator kept tapping his hand on the table. Fate, 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 roared someone, finally catching the adjudicator's attention. Oh, you guys are here. Why are you so distracted? Asked the Judge of Chaos, a woman with light purple skin, long black hair, a floral black dress, glowing eyes, and a crown. What's your purpose for asking for the meeting? Asked the Magistrate of Heaven, a burly man with no shirt, white pants, and golden rings as bracelets. Did one of the seeds bring you trouble again? Asked the Overseer of Samsara, a woman dressed in all white with a black cinnamon bar on her forehead. She exuded a cold aura similar to death. Her voice contained great ridicule, and she did not hide it in the slightest. What's with you? You seem a little more aggressive than usual, asked the Justiciary of Time, a humanoid cat dressed in purple. His body contained countless ornaments associated with time. That bastard is now interfering with my plans, she replied. The others knew who she referred to as soon as she uttered these words. I haven't heard of a battle, commented the arbitrator of the Source Chi. She was a woman with black eyes and gold hair. However, her outfit was difficult to describe as most of her body appeared illusory, as if she was nothing but a phantom and did not truly exist. I think she met his younger self, commented the Magistrate of Heaven. In that case, things are getting interesting. The group knew Samsara's plan involved a way to get out of their predicament of being prisoners. Additionally, unlike Fate's actions which brought him trouble, her actions are legit and did not break Grand Daos rules. Well, your pawn was his greatest nemesis during his mortal period. Shouldn't you have expected this outcome? Asked Time, calmly licking his palm. His action was the most common action of a feline species, but when he did it, it contained a natural regal and nobility. You know things should not have turned like this, replied Samsara, not hiding her displeasure. True. The timeline has been a mess, replied Time. The lower end of the river should have been set in stone, but now there are signs of chaos. The cat could not help but sigh. One thing that has always been constant since he had this job was that the past was absolute. But now he could not say for sure. Let's focus on the situation, reminded Chaos. Fate, why did you call this meeting? Fate sighed. I recently sensed a subtle fluctuation in the river of fate. According to my predictions, the fate stealers are about to be active. Are you serious? Asked Samsara. I thought we dealt a great blow to them. Yes, they should have been greatly injured and recuperating. You and Time reassured us that they would no longer be a problem. declared Source Chi. Explain yourself. Everyone's focus shifted to Fate and Time, their aura scarier than ever. I don't know what's going on, explained Fate. I am more worried than all of you. He knew he was the least likely to survive this catastrophe, so he did not want the Fate Stealers to return. I think I can explain, said the cat, remaining extremely calm despite the situation. Heavenly Book Paragon changed the lower end of the primordial timeline. I'm guessing he took the opportunity to also change some things. Lower end, middle and upper end, past, present, and future, the 6 of them are creatures that have transcended the shackles of time. As such, they can travel through the river of time to the past, present, and future. However, at some point they discovered the upper end of the river became blurry before becoming inaccessible to them. With their power, they immediately knew what such an event meant. Someone strong enough either blocks the upper end or something happens to them in the middle, making it so they don't have a future. Bastard, roasted Samsara. If not for you breaking the rules, how would we be in this situation? For a brief moment, the entire chaos universe trembled. Luckily, the place they were located isolated most of the power. I only did what you people did not have the courage to do, replied Fate with a sneer. Furthermore, you know, even if he was not one of my Fate seed, he would still attack us. You've seen the other timelines. But it's a fact you aggravated the situation, countered Samsara, who refused to back down even though she knew he was correct. This is not the time to be fighting, persuaded Chaos. Easy for you to say, you're the least affected in this situation. Chaos looked at Samsara coldly. The latter was correct. No matter the final situation, she has the highest chance of survival. That madman will not destroy primordial chaos and all the chaos worlds, which is her domain. The only way she might suffer is if her favorite children, the fiend gods, might be eradicated by that bastard. You really need to calm down, persuaded Source Chi. Then she focused on time. How can a little paragon change the primordial timeline? Because someone or something allows it. Grand Tao. Most likely. But why? Whatever is happening at the upper end of the river of time requires such manipulation, replied Time, but his answer showed he was not confident in his analysis. If it wanted to change the primordial timeline, why not do it through us? Asked Chaos. Isn't it obvious? We are no longer reliable, replied Heaven with gritted teeth. His anger reached the pinnacle, especially after knowing that bastard Heavenly Book was involved in the situation. We all know the current situation is the result of a chess game between Grand Tao and someone else, explained Time. Since Grand Tao made its move with Heavenly Book, then the appearance of the Fate Stealers should be the opponent's turn. The room quieted down, the facial expressions of all of them looked terrifying. They did not know who Grand Tao's opponent was, but they had long guessed who it was. However, they refused to admit it was true because of the implications. That bastard is in the same realm as us. How could he be fighting Grand Tao? Said Fate with a desolate voice. He knows he was the only one who has no chance of surviving if that bastard is the one fighting against Grand Tao. So he did not want to admit Time's analysis. There is no need to panic, said Heaven. We know the future is ever-changing. As long as we do what we are supposed to, we still have hope of changing it. Heaven is correct, nodded Time. Our main goal should be to find one of the time nexuses, kill his young self, and eliminate him for good. That's easier said than done, said Samsara. He's very good at hiding his time nexuses. The last time we tried that, he ambushed us and almost killed Fate and Source Chi. She sneered. We don't even know why he has time nexuses. Without such vital information, we are already at a disadvantage. Beings on their level have transcended time and space, so it should not matter whether their past selves are killed. It's irrelevant to them and has no effect unless very specific means are used by people of the same level or higher. However, that bastard seemed to have such a major flaw that he could easily be killed even by a mortal at specific times in his life. Moreover, these time nexuses will appear once before disappearing forever. According to their calculations, there will soon be a time when the time nexuses will disappear forever. As such, each time they missed one, their chances of eliminating him drastically decreased. Does that matter? Asked Heaven. In a direct confrontation, we are not their opponent. So, we can only rely on this method. Everyone groaned after hearing this. The scariest part about that bastard was not his overwhelming strength or his scary intelligence but his powerful allies that he cultivated. They might be able to deal with him if he were alone, but he has so many thieves in his camp that it's sickening. You guys still haven't talked about how to deal with the Fate Stealers? What else can we do? Let's hunt them down, said Heaven. It's not like they had any other choice. Luckily, Grand Tao will not place any restrictions on them when dealing with that bastard. Do you think we should solicit Heavenly Book's help? After all, it seems he's in our camp now, suggested Chaos. Absolutely not, replied Heaven immediately. He's nowhere near qualified. Whatever, replied Chaos while the others shrugged. They could see Heaven felt deeply against this plan, so it was not worth alienating him for a mere paragon, even one with unmatched potential. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. The universe is about to enter an era of chaos and strife. Based on Qiyuan's actions, the Eternal Ascension world will be involved and might even be at the center. Sadly, I cannot use the pawns I left there. The situation in the Eternal Ascension world made him feel aggrieved. He spent so much time and effort creating a few pawns worldwide. Yet, after Mithriya and Supreme Unity appeared, his pawns became their pawns. Heavenly Book sighed, knowing he could not help it. Unless he finds a way to hide and survive against half-step transcendence, the situation will not change. Heavenly Book closed his eyes, prepared to continue waiting. He has clones in different chaos worlds doing certain tasks. He only needs to be patient. However, not even 10 seconds after closing his eyes, he opened them again. A talisman appeared before him and he activated it. Death Reverence has appeared? Although the news only said signs of his appearance, this news still shocked him. There are a few paragons that Heavenly Book cannot see through in their secrets, and Death Reverence is at the top of the list. Why is he showing up now? No, the current situation is the perfect time for him to appear. Without hesitation, Heavenly Book created another clone and sent it to the sighting site of Death Reverence. A lack of information equals unwanted variables, so he wanted to know the whereabouts of Death Reverence. Eternal Ascension World, Origin Seal Continent. What exactly did this kid do? Muttered Sword Empress as she gazed at the Tao opening Sex Chi luck. Even if he opened a new era, only a few hundred years have passed. How could he have gathered such luck? The current luck feedback from the lower dimension is enough for Qiyuan and someone else to revive. Furthermore, there is a great trend of upward increase. She remembered the kid discussing with Qiyuan how he was going to change the environment and make many improvements. However, they could not stay for long, so she did not hear the details. However, now, it appeared the kid had a grand plan with far-reaching consequences. It's not just the Tao opening sect, said Wu Hong. The entire destiny of the upper dimension has shown signs of revival. They knew what those changes meant. It was a signal that the current political situation of the Eternal Ascension world was about to be reshuffled, just like it did when so many paragons felt during the ultimate taboo. Such a change should be a good thing. The terrible reigns of these 8 parasites were coming to an end, and the world could return to its prospering age. There is also a chance they could create an even more prosperous era. However, the wise individuals knew the 8 parasites did not determine whether this reshuffling would occur. No, such an honor went to the 2 sons. Such a change has given Mithriya the edge, but it also means the kid's situation is now more dangerous than ever, added Sword Empress with furrowed brows. With Supreme Unity's mindset, he will do everything possible to kill him. Unfortunately, there is nothing we can do in this situation. Wu Hong sighed, not liking how powerless she often was since the end of the ultimate taboo. Sword Empress felt the same way but understood there was no point in lingering on the past. What benefit did you get? What do you mean? You're married to this kid, so you should benefit from whatever he is doing. I'm curious about what you got. Nothing. You should know he was only married to some unknown clone of me. With how shameless and thick-skinned this kid is, do you think he will care? Sneered Sword Empress. Plus, heaven and earth have already acknowledged your union. Anyway, I haven't acknowledged it. But you also haven't refused. Wu Hong chose to ignore her. Internal, Wu Hong was cursing out loud as she knew her friend would never let go of the fact her descendant was her husband. So what did you get? Nothing. However, I've recently had a feeling something good was about to happen. Sword Empress' eyes lit up. At their level, any fortunate encounter that can be described as good is never something simple. Don't forget to respect your elders with some gifts afterward. The beating I gave you last time was not enough? Do you want some more? Relax, I'm just kidding, coughed Sword Empress lightly before changing the subject. Have you noticed Time Eater's erratic movement recently? Yes, he seems in a rush. Do you think we should take action? He might be a variable. There is no need, replied Wu Hong. These people were never true allies. Once they detect his anomaly, they might be the first ones to take action. And once one of them acts, it's only a matter of time before the contradictions between them explode. You might be right, but something tells me Time Eater will not let things escalate to such an extent. Even if he doesn't act, supreme unity won't allow them to disintegrate from the inside. Fair point, but I still think our best option is to wait and recuperate as soon as possible. Wait? Do you want to wait for the kid? Yes, since it's his destiny to deal with these people, let him deal with it. We can heal and support him if necessary. That's fine too, nodded Sword Empress, who guessed many people had similar ideas. Sometimes it's best to let fate do its work and not interfere. It's best if we focus on the future after these parasites are gone. Are you talking about the prophecy? Although it took some time because of the current isolation, they still received the all-seeing temple's divination. Yes. You should understand better than me that if the universe becomes chaotic, we might be at the center of the storm. Sword Empress grunted with her melodious voice. She knew Qiyuan's action of concentrating most of the luck of the chaos universe on the eternal ascension world had many advantages as well as many disadvantages. Unfortunately, they were now in a time when the disadvantage prevailed. The chaos is indeed a great danger, but it's also an opportunity, muttered Sword Empress, and Wu Hong agreed with her. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know and report chapter so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 9:15, unedited chapter. Wang Wei sat cross-legged, floating in the air. Before him were 3 small carvings resembling the Temple of Havens. He modeled his divine altar. However, these carvings were pulsing immortal chi instead of origin chi. Immortal manions were nothing more than very condensed immortal chi, processed to generate and convert other chis into immortal chi. In the process of creating one, Wang Wei only had to pay attention to a few things. The first of which is compatibility with the Dantian or divine sea. If the immortal mansion is not compatible with most divine seas, then only a few people with a unique physique would be able to use it. Furthermore, there are too many types of energy, so Wang Wei has to consider the compatibility with the origin source, catering the immortal mansion to that specific chi. The second thing he considered was stability. After refining the mansion, it will slowly modify the body and soul to a higher level, granting its user the immortal essence. However, if the immortal mansion is unstable, the immortal chi release will destroy its users instead of helping them transition into a higher life form. There was no problem with the refining process. However, is there a way I can improve the process? Maybe make the immortal mansion unique? Muttered Wang Wei. The idea of a unique immortal mansion is not unique because that's where most insurgent techniques for immortal venerables originated from. Instead of thinking of ways to make the immortal mansion stronger, why not go in the direction of making cultivation faster, decreasing the time the sect needs to create a Tier 11 immortal sovereigns, pondered Wang Wei while reviewing the information he knew about Tier 11. The core of Tier 11 is life. Empyreans have the power of creation and can create worlds and life. The inner world of Tao Ruler evolved to also create living creatures. However, these creatures require stringent requirements to leave the inner world and survive in the eternal ascension world. Finally, immortal sovereigns would absorb souls into their immortal mansions. The reason for this transformation is due to the difficulty of cultivating. The lives created by Empyreans and Tao Rulers are to speed up their understanding of the grand Tao source. They can link their souls to their creations, boosting their comprehension. Meanwhile, the souls of immortal sovereigns are to aid them in refining and processing more immortal chi. The totem warrior could be a solution, thought Wang Wei. If they could link their immortal mansion to a specifically designed emperor formation that helped them refine and process immortal chi, the time needed to become sovereigns would drastically decrease. Wang Wei's eyes lit up after thinking how powerful the Tao opening sect would become after he left them such a formation or method. However, his excitement soon faded as he thought of the balance mechanism. If the sect truly had the method of cultivating so many immortal sovereigns, the mechanism would truly not tolerate their existence. According to Wang Wei's speculation, the sect will become so powerful and influential in the next 3 generations that they could easily take over the entire myriad emperor world while fighting every faction at once. As such, he had already prepared drastic measures to prevent the balance mechanism from scheming against them. For example, the Tao opening sect will not participate in the heaven will battle in every generation. Instead, the sect will retain a low-key attitude, even entering a semi-sealing state. After his father's generation and the 11th emperor, they will only participate in the battle every few generations when they have a talented enough heaven chosen. As for Li Jun and Yen Liling, their situation is special, so they will not count for the sect's great emperor positions for a very long time. As such, they might be the 15th and 16th emperors or maybe lower. Wang Wei did not know for sure, but he knew Kai Song would be counted as emperors before them. Why is my job so hard? Wang Wei began to resent true heavenly Tao. If he lived in a regular chaos world where the power ceiling was the Paragon realm, his sect would not have to worry about balance with the strength of their ancestors. Alas, it was not necessarily a good thing that true heavenly Tao's power was half-step transcendence. Forget it, it'll just work a little harder, thought Wang Wei, who already had a plan to deal with the issue of the Immortal Qi gathering array. He will allow the court's people to use it. However, the array will have tiers, granting people different levels of boost and aid. The first tier will be a secret and only accessible to the Tao opening sect. Meanwhile, everyone else will have access to the second tier, which they will think is the first tier. The other factions will have a way to accelerate the rate of cultivating immortal sovereigns, just not as fast as the Tao opening sect. With such a design, the balance mechanism cannot complain. Wang Wei looked in the distance. The only issue is the balance between each heaven will and their community. The Myriad Emperor world was in a fast-track development. So far, there is no balance mechanism acting against it because the world has been behind for countless eras and is basically catching up. However, once the Heaven Emperor era reaches a small peak, it will soon become a problem when one community can overwhelm the majority of the lower dimension. Well, such a thing doesn't concern me. It's up to true heavenly Tao on how to keep the balance, not me. Such an issue was not yet his problem. Wang Wei can already detect some information about this issue. Currently, countless fortunate encounters are appearing in other world communities in response to the development of the Myriad Emperor world. True heavenly Tao saw the potential of his era and is already responding to keep the balance. As such, before it's time for his tentacles to reach other world communities, countless new insurgents and immortal venerables will appear. Wang Wei can even predict that ascending the battle realm will be much easier for many great emperors as an attempt to balance his overwhelming power. Under the luck blessing of true heavenly Tao, all these prideful and arrogant great emperors will have an easier time putting away their flaws, calming down, and working together to balance him. Wang Wei did not care. With his current strength, few things in the world could truly balance him. His worry is that true heavenly Tao will act out of desperation and remove the power suppression on immortal sovereigns. If it does that, he has to hurry to ensure his battle prowess enters the Empyrean realm as soon as possible. Wang Wei exhaled, there is no need to worry, I've prepared to the best of my ability. He sent his people into the world community to establish a footstep before arriving. However, his motive is to also allow them to take their share of the luck and destiny true heavenly Tao will sprinkle to balance him. Furthermore, their job is to ruin any possible alliance and connections that might threaten his rise. Finally, he has his eyes set on the Spirit Genesis sect's method of using paradox to hide from true heavenly Tao. If he can get his hands on that method, the Tao opening sect will have an additional security measure against the balance mechanism. Wang Wei disappeared and returned to the sect. Without wasting time, he summoned Origin 1 and Miscellaneous 1. Was the list finished? List? Asked Origin 1, who soon understood what he meant. Did you create a Tao source seed? No, Immortal Mansion and 3 of them. Okay, let me call them. Origin 1 went for himself, calling 3 elders from the sect, all from Wang Chang's generations. Soon Wang Wei saw 2 people before him, 2 men and 1 woman. Besides the woman, who barely looked middle-aged, everyone else looked like they were 1 foot in the grave. Wang Wei nodded to them and they immediately saluted, but he did not let them kneel. The fact these people were on top of the list showed their merit to the sect was unmatched by 3 generations. They deserve his respect for their contributions. It's a shame they did not meet the requirements to become Tao ancestors. Wang Wei granted them each an immortal mansion and watched them refine it. He wanted to ensure he did not miss anything or whether there were places he could improve. The process was smooth and efficient. After the immortal mansion entered their divine sea, these people's law altar in the sea of consciousness returned to the divine sea. Chapter 9:16, Don't forget to protect them during their immortal tribulation, said Wang Wei. Mortals who refine an immortal minion must survive immortal tribulation. Luckily, one of the positives of having an emperor refine an immortal mansion is that a small part of their powers can remain in the mansion to aid in the tribulation. However, Wang Wei also did not want something to happen to these people, so he wanted Origin 1 to add more security measures during the tribulation. Wang Wei then gazed at Miscellaneous 1. How is the sex formation going? Did you fix the flaws? Yes and no, replied Miscellaneous 1. I have fixed all the flaws my abilities could find. However, Fate is a very versatile Dao, so I wanted the array to display all its power without any waste. As such, I have rearranged the other 9 formations and used yours as the core for an even more powerful array. Lastly, I must ensure that future formations can fuse with this new combination formation. I see, nodded Wang Wei. You need to add Gu Shen's Deception Dao into the formation. Our sect will need to be more low-key in the future, so it should help greatly. No problem, replied Miscellaneous 1. As he said, Fate Dao is versatile, and with the Origin Dao of the founder, it's not a problem to add Deception Dao ability to the sect's array. Wang Wei nodded in satisfaction. Once the final array is finished, he can study it to elevate his understanding of the Grand Dao source. The reason I called you is that I need you to make a unique array for me, said Wang Wei before explaining his idea of using the Totem Warrior and Immortal Mansions to cultivate more immortal sovereigns. Origin 1's eyes lit up after hearing this idea. Then he fixed his eyes on Miscellaneous 1. It should not be a problem, explained the array master. However, Totem Warrior is a new profession, but it's not well developed. So it might take some time. We can just ask Tong Ruobing. She has already succeeded, suggested Origin 1. Tong Ruobing used an acquired source rune physique to take power from the Origin Talisman. As such, she could be said to be the first and only truly successful Totem Warrior. Is that okay? If we do this, she will receive a lot of luck for the creation of the Totem Warrior, said Miscellaneous 1. Even if we don't ask her, she will still receive the merit, said Origin 1, and he was correct. Although it was Wang Wei's idea, she was the one who executed it perfectly. So much of the luck belonged to her. Speaking of her, how are things going in the Star Beast world? As expected, trouble after trouble, replied Wang Wei. Although Mu Lei has not asked for help yet, he has been keeping an eye on that world. So, the real issue is whether Mu Lei is willing to compromise. As for Wang Wei, he's acting as a foreign mercenary. Although he requires a hefty price to show up, Mu Lei will not have to lose any power by utilizing him. In that case, we need to prepare for the future relationship between our two worlds, uttered Origin 1. Furthermore, it also means Tong Ruobing will prove the Dao in this generation. She will be a foreign queen mother by then. Do we also give her a position in our court? Queen Mother is a position only second to the Heavenly Emperor. So, it holds a lot of power and is responsible for replacing a great deal of world source. It will depend on whether she will stay in the Myriad Emperor world or not, replied Wang Wei. However, based on the situation, it's very unlikely. Wang Wei could guess her subsequent actions. Lay out an Emperor Foundation for the Great Talisman City before focusing most of her time and attention on the Star Beast world. After all, she has more to gain over there and does not have to worry about a monster like him looming over her head. If that's true, we can either exchange one of our spots for theirs or we grant the Great Talisman City a spot that is neither too high nor too low, suggested Origin 1. It's best to exchange spots, decided Wang Wei. It will be easier to spy or even intervene in their worlds through an ambassador. But they can also do the same to us? If they have the means, why not? Origin 1 then remembered who was before him and shook his head. Yes, with the vast difference in power, how dare these people try to intervene in the affairs of the Myriad Emperor world? What about world communities? Once we spread our footsteps, the information about the court could not be hidden. By then, many people will try to set up their own court. Do you still want me to spread our court to the entire lower dimension? Origin 1 quieted down. Although I could do this with my strength. However, such an act would doom my era, replied Wang Wei. Even my father could probably barely take over my position. Then, once an emperor was not powerful enough to control the court, the other heavenward worlds would band together and eradicate the court and even the Myriad Emperor world to prevent another me from appearing. Origin 1 sighed as he knew this was the case. Being powerful was fine, but being too powerful was a problem. Strength is needed to control a certain level of luck or destiny. Unfortunately, besides Wang Wei, No one has the strength to control the destiny of a heavenly court that controls the entire lower dimension. If he did something like this, the luck and karma backlash after he ascends is enough to wipe out the entire world. It just pains me that so many people will copy the court without any price. If things were so simple, I would be more than happy, said Wang Wei, shaking his head. If things proceeded as such, he could blackmail all these people for using his idea. Chapter 9:17. Second court meeting. The 300-year deadline approached, and every faction was ready for the second meeting. The anticipation was so great that most people did not care that the Blood Earth, one of the 6 forbidden lands, disappeared after a visit from the Heavenly Emperor. Anyway, the Western Pure Bliss land was dealt with by Fengheng, so people began to believe only a few forbidden lands would survive this era. With the second meeting approaching, people waited with bated breath. They hoped and feared this meeting would be as world-changing as the first one. In the past 300 years, they have experienced the benefit of the Heavenly Court's rule. They wish the Heavenly Emperor would bring them even more benefit. Of course, some worry about drastically improving the Dao opening sect's military and political power. Sadly, such a thing was inevitable and could not be changed. The day of the meeting, everyone stood in the throne room, calmly waiting. Everyone arrived earlier and slowly waited without any signs of impatience. Then, at the allocated time, Wang Wei slowly walked into the room and sat in the chair. The officials have seen Your Majesty the Heavenly Emperor. The voices of thousands of people echoed in the room. Many people did a 90-degree bow, while those with sufficient strength only saluted with a slight bow. At ease, said Wang Wei with a chuckle. He did not take the fact these people referred to themselves as his official to heart. So far, only Wu Ming and a few devil cultivators have habited the court. Although many were tempted, they seemed to come up with an agreement to continue and wait. However, Wang Wei did not care since time was to his advantage. While these factions were still indecisive, his Dao opening sect was taking full advantage of the court's benefits. Wang Wei looked at everyone before landing on Su Shi's. A unique emperor soul? It should be tempered using primordial energy, analyzed Wang Wei. Her strength should have reached the threefold battle realm, with the potential to ascend to the fourfold realm. Wang Wei could tell Su Shi was in the process of creating a unique body refining technique. To be precise, she will complete the one she was already cultivating. Once she succeeds and achieves 40 infant fiend god force, she will enter the fourfold battle realm. A unique technique. From now on, the Academy will have an insurgent technique similar to the ancient desolate body refining scripture. After briefly checking on Su Shi, Wang Wei did not pay much attention to the others. In such a short period of 300 years, they did not make much improvement, even with the current benefit of the court. Most of these eternal level powerhouses were saving their merit for later use. I know what you're thinking, but I guarantee there is no fraud in this list, added Wang Wei. As I said, the main topic of discussion is the livelihood of mortals. Now, I will show you the lives of the mortals in our territory so you will understand the list. He waved his hand to show them how the mortals in their sect's domains live. He showed them how they had developed a civilization unique to themselves. They remember a few thousand years ago, the Dao opening sect started a project of opening schools for mortals and creating a bunch of constructs to facilitate faster travel and development. They copied these methods because Heavenly Dao was very generous during that time and handed out plenty of merits. However, once there were no longer any benefits, most people stopped doing such a pointless thing. Most factions even dismantled these constructs to recycle the resources used. However, now they regret their actions as they realize the true purpose of doing these things. The Dao opening sect has been preparing for the court for countless millennia, granting them countless advantages. Why are we only fourth? Thought Su Shi as she looked at the list. She guessed correctly about the main topic of the court, so she suggested the Academy copy the Dao opening sect's model of dealing with the mortals in their domains. With her level of power, she detected the Dao opening sect's domains had a vibrant atmosphere around them unlike any other factions. This atmosphere greatly contributed to their sect's chi luck. Based on this analysis, she also sought to replicate their success. Unfortunately, she only had a short 300 years and could not immediately catch up to the sect's 1,000 years of history. Even then, she believed she would be second during the meeting, acquiring more advantages for the academy. Alas, she was wrong. I have never heard of the Great Jin dynasty, she thought with a frown. She already analyzed why certain groups were in their position. The Heavenly Tree Village was a new supreme land that rose in this generation. They focused deeply on tempering the Tao heart by living a simple, mortal life. Despite their short existence, most factions knew about them. After all, the Heavenly Emperor built the court on top of a world tree raised in that village. Furthermore, the Emperor also left a projection to the village. In an emergency, the projection can act as protection. People even believed the projection could borrow the strength of the real tree when necessary. The conclusion of most emperor lineages is that this village has a great karmic connection with the Heavenly Emperor, so they labeled them into the class of not making them into an enemy. The D clan often dealt with mortals and protected them from devil cultivators, so their ranking made sense. Their clan often does good things for mortals to reinforce their identities as protectors of the Western continent. The Western Bliss sect, although recently established, was the savior of countless mortals during the era of chaos in the Western continent. Additionally, they inherited many of the mortals that the D clan used to protect. Lastly, as a sect of Buddhism that focuses on compassion, they treated the people under their rules with great respect. The five-element balance palace and the Tai profound gates are the leaders of Taoism, the biggest religion of the myriad emperor world. They have countless believers and worshippers scattered all over the world. As such, they treat the mortals under their reign with decency and dignity to ensure their reputation and consolidate their chi luck. The Eternal Dream sect most likely received some inside information from the Tao Opening sect and did not abandon the mortals like other sects once the benefits no longer manifested. The Yu clan was not higher on the list because they controlled only one domain, and their population was not up to par. Tong Ruobing was probably smart enough not to completely abandon these mortals as she felt the Tao Opening sect was planning something, so she chose to wait and continue her support, even if it was the bare minimum, analyzed Su Shi. She would definitely do something like this with her personality. It would also explain why she was not higher on the list. Everything else made sense except for this Great Jin dynasty. Many people had questions similar to Su Shi but knew it was not the time to ask since the Heavenly Emperor was not finished. After everyone processed the information he gave, he continued, "The Tao Opening sect will become the standard model that I want you to follow." Many people immediately frowned after hearing this, releasing an aura of hesitation and struggle. Wang Wei immediately guessed their main source of concern: resources. Two main things are required to create a civilization like the one the Tao Opening sect cultivated: food and the resources for the constructs. The issue of food can be dealt with after working together. However, the constructs are another problem. This world is too vast. According to Wang Wei's calculation, the world's largest domain is 576 times that of the observable universe back on Earth, and that's only one domain. Whatever domain a mortal is born in, they will never leave it through their entire lives. Even worse, millions of generations of their ancestors will live and die in that same domain. The distance between two cultivators' cities is usually counted in the light years. Meanwhile, the distance between two mortal cities in the same mortal dynasty can be as large as the Earth's circumference. If not for the fact that animals like horses were bred by heaven and earth for long and fast travels, transportation in mortal dynasties would be a nightmare. With such a vast distance, the constructs needed by mortals will need to be at least heaven tier to allow them to break the space and teleport to vast distances. However, heaven tier resources involve void-shattering realm cultivators and the power of laws. Such resources are valuable even in emperor lineages, so how could they use them to cultivate mortals? Even with the possibility of reward from heaven and earth, the gain was not worth the loss. Wang Wei waved his hand and a seed appeared. This is the good fortune seed. After planting it, it will absorb the spiritual QI between heaven and earth to accelerate growth. Furthermore, it can be programmed to turn into different crops like rice, grains, fruits, etc. With this thing, the issue of food is dealt with. The only precaution you need to take is to prevent animals from destroying the crops and deal with heaven and man-made catastrophes like dragons turning over, earthquake, drought, and insects. Everyone's eyes lit up as they saw another possibility for this rice: cultivate body-tempering cultivators. Any product raised from this good fortune seed should contain traces of spiritual energy, which can be used for the tempering realm. They can use large quantities of food to replace low-level pills. Lastly, if they could retain some power of good fortune from the seed, it is the perfect energy or power to cast the foundation for their heaven chosen. Wang Wei knew what they were thinking but did not care, so he continued, As for the issue of transportation, I also have a solution. He waved his hand to show them a special dimension. This is a subspace created by the Tao opening sect, only accessible to mortals for their transportation. Our mortals have control of this subspace, allowing them to travel long distances without using any heaven-tier resources. Your job will be to create the same subspace and connect them. Be warned that the subspace belongs only to mortals, and cultivators are forbidden from using it. What a great method, thought most people, followed by why didn't I think of that? One last thing, continued Wang Wei pointing at the list in the middle of the room. This list was not created arbitrarily by me to decide the number of merits. People's eyes squinted as they realized the implications behind these words. Heavenly Tao is in charge of the list and decides the number of merit points allocated. It's based on plenty of criteria with the main focus on mortals' livelihood. In other words, the more developed and fulfilling the lives of the mortals in your domains are, the more merit points you will receive. No one said a word as they guessed they were more. As for what those merits are for, said Wang Wei with a smile. Of course, it is a form of currency for exchange. He waved his hand to show another list. People's breathing became elevated as the first thing on the list was Grand Tao Source Seed, followed by Immortal Mansion. Now that Heavenly Tao has plenty of world source, it needs a new way to develop the world, hence this list. As you can see, with enough merit points, you can directly exchange Tao Source Seeds and Immortal Mansions from Heavenly Tao, cultivating more immortals for your factions. Chapter 9:19. Unfairness. The representatives could no longer contain their excitement, greed, and desire. Previously, they thought the Heavenly Emperor wanted to elevate the life of mortals simply for a few merits and luck. But now they knew there were tangible benefits. The path of immortal venerable and Tao ancestor has always been controlled by great emperors, a right directly handed to them by heaven and earth. A few people knew such a thing was not absolute in the upper dimension, but that did not matter since they were not there. But now, people have another method to access these two paths. The Emperor's monopoly was basically over. Although they knew the Grand Tao Source Seeds and Immortal Mansions created by Heavenly Tao would not be as unique and special as the ones created by great emperors, it was still better than nothing. The most excited of these groups were the non-emperor lineages. With this merit point system, they might have a chance to become immortal and Tao lineages relying on their own effort. However, the eyes of these people soon dim as they see the price of these two things. They were not the only ones. The emperor lineages soon had a similar response. Based on the prices, only the Tao opening sect could buy the things on the list. Even the great Jin dynasty could not buy an immortal mansion. People soon focused on other items on the list, and despite only having a few things, everything was expensive. The only thing most people could buy was epiphany time. As the name suggests, people can use merits to enter a state of epiphany, elevating their comprehension to a realm never possible. Alas, the epiphany time is divided into mortal and immortal grade, and these factions can only buy the mortal grade. Furthermore, there is a warning in the list that the immortal grade can only help people cultivate 40% Grand Tao Source before becoming useless. Two more items on the list caught people's attention. Power Veins Pills and Pure Soul Power. The effects of these items are indeed valuable. The Power Veins Pills can drastically increase the flesh bodish strength. There is a notice that 100 of these pills are enough to cultivate an insurgent with a fleshly body that can fight third-class emperors. However, after seeing the price, most people shake their heads and focus on the pure soul power. Soul or spiritual power has always been vital, especially in the immortal realm. For a cultivator to become an Empyrean, Tao ruler, or immortal sovereign, their soul power must reach a certain threshold. Sadly, that threshold is so high, preventing countless people from reaching it. The pure soul power is something people on our level desperately need, thought Ao Shin, who knew the importance of soul power. The two chatted for a few more minutes before Su Shi left. Then Wang Wei waved his hand to teleport 80% of the Dao rhymes from their discussions to the Dao opening sect. Such vast and extensive Dao rhymes will greatly benefit the sect and allow its disciples and elders to better understand the laws of heaven and earth. Finally, Wang Wei focused on a battle in the distance. Chapter 922. Immortal Sovereign's Might. Although the four spent 45 years in the court, only a day passed outside. Wang Wei did not want their discussions to affect the political situation in the world, so he used his time Dao to change the rate of time outside and in the court. As such, a day later Feng Heng Ao Shen and Hua Feng Huang left the court and returned to their factions. At least they tried. Hua Feng Huang teleported to the moon, which is the entrance to the ancient clan's small world. However, a visitor was waiting for her, an elderly man dressed in all black slowly caressing an all-white sword while sitting cross-legged on a moon rock. A sharp aura naturally emanated from the man's body. If a mortal looked at him, their eyes would bleed like a sharp object pierced their pupils. "You're from the sword-casting villa?" asked Hua Feng Huang. "That's correct. Haven't you people given up already? The ancient clan do not have the right or power to monopolize all the god positions in the eastern continent," said Xianxia. "But you guys get to control an entire region of the sea? You and I both know the sea is not as valuable as any of the continents. Furthermore, our territory does not house too many powerful emperor lineages, unlike yours," calmly responded Xianxia without stopping to caress his swords. It was as if he had not seen or touched it for a long time and was very nostalgic about it. "All I'm hearing are excuses and rhetorics," snorted Hua Feng Huang. "This conversation is pointless. You and I are only pawns on this chessboard, but it seems your ancient clan has offended the chess player." Hua Feng Huang's pupil squinted. "Yes, our battle is inevitable." She took out her white tiger killing sword, releasing a terrifying killing intent. "Such a beautiful and powerful sword is wasted on a sword user like yourself," said Xianxia as he stood up, releasing a killing intent as pure as his opponent. "The obsession you people have over the purity of the sword is disgusting and unsavory," replied Hua Feng Huang. "You wouldn't understand," replied Xianxia, shaking his head. "However, what should I expect from people who only see the sword as nothing but a tool?" His aura changed, becoming more ethereal and elusive. He resembled a supreme immortal swordsman who had slaughtered gods, demons, Buddhas and great emperors. Xianxia mobilized an immense amount of immortal qi before rushing forward. In an instant, he appeared before her and slashed his sword downward. Flick. Hua Feng Huang blocked the attack, but her pupil squinted. She discovered a vast energy that offset her killing heaven law. Flick, flick, flick. Xianxia released a barrage of sword strikes, each faster and more potent than the previous one. In an instant, their swords clashed thousands of times. Then Hua Feng Huang suddenly felt something was wrong as her intuition warned her of danger. So she used her yin-yang Dao to control push and pull. A powerful force manifested out of nowhere, pushing Xianxia 100 meters away. Thousands of sword marks appeared on Hua Feng Huang's body, destroying her clothes and revealing her jade-like skin. She was calm throughout the process, not showing an ounce of pain. "The undefendable sword art?" she asked as her body naturally healed. However, not all the sword marks disappeared. "You're quite knowledgeable, little girl," said Xianxia. The undefendable sword art was an ancient technique that existed before the Null era. No one knows who created it, but this technique was famous because it was often used to deal with non-emperors. The technique was extremely difficult to block, so immortal venerables and Dao ancestors would use it against their own kind, inflicting heavy injuries on their opponent. The idea of this technique is to take advantage of the fact the other paths do not have the healing factors of the Emperor path. Hua Feng Huang secretly sneered after figuring out the opponent's tactic. Although she did not have the unnatural healing factors of eternal emperors, she had the Phoenix bloodline to make up for it. So, she only needed to be on guard for the opponent's other tricks and schemes. After her body naturally regenerated, Hua Feng Huang prepared to go on the offensive. However, before either acted, a voice echoed in their surrounding. "Could you guys fight someone else? I don't want your battle to destroy the moon." "The moon god?" said Hua Feng Huang. "Yes, and your battle can affect my domain. So, please fight someone else." Hua Feng Huang and Xianxia looked at each other before disappearing. They appeared near the world's barrier to ensure their battles did not affect other people. Immortal Lotus Step, Xianxia used a spell that increased speed. In an instant he appeared before his opponent, leaving numerous lotus shining with immortal lights in his thrall. Flick, flick, flick. His sword clashed with Huang. However, he discovered she did not hesitate to fight him head-on despite knowing about the undefendable sword art. Soon he knew why. His sword technique failed. A subtle white and black shield appeared around her body, blocking the attack. "Are you surprised?" asked Huang. "This technique is ingenious, using cause and effect to ignore any defenses. However, as long as I can block the karmic connection between me and you, it's easy to defend against it. The sect master warned me about you, telling me I should not treat you lightly because you're a member of a terrifying generation. I should have listened to him," sighed Xianxia. "You should have listened to him," she said with a sneer. Killing sword, she slashed her sword and manifested a terrifying white tiger that rushed toward Xianxia. Xianxia frowned briefly before two more killing characters manifested between heaven and earth. His aura rose drastically as the space around him twisted without much effort. So far, he has used 4 killing characters in his 7 killing sword art. He was confident in his sword but knew not to underestimate his enemy. A brilliant sword energy that was as vast as countless galaxies descended on Huang to eradicate her from the world. As such, he knew such a method was not enough to kill a primarch with a 5 sacred beast bloodline. "Little lady, why don't you check on your clan?" Rage flashed deep in Huang's eyes as she swiftly used her divine sense to check on the small world of the ancient clan. Her pupils dilated as she sensed countless immortal powerhouses and one person who had a similar aura to Xianxia. "You allied with the sea race?" "Unlike the ancient clan, we know how to bend and stretch," replied Xianxia casually. "You're dreaming if you think these people can destroy my ancient clan," said Huang with gritted teeth. "Of course not. After all, you people are protected by luck and destiny. However, we can destroy enough of you until you're forced to close your doors and recuperate for countless generations." The void around Huang trembled as anger almost overwhelmed her mind. She did not expect her ancient clan, once the ruler of heaven and earth, to fall to such a state. How the mighty have fallen. "What do you want?" asked Huang, calming herself down. Xianxia smiled before sending her a scroll. As soon as she read it, she almost lost all the composure she used so much effort to gather. These people wanted half of the god position in the eastern continent, and many of them were high-level ones with great potential for merit and world source blessing. "It's impossible for me to give you half. Time is of the essence, little lady, and we do not want to negotiate for a long time with you," said Xianxia. How can such a decision be made lightly? She wanted to negotiate. Otherwise, she will be very disadvantaged in this settlement. There is no point in buying time. We know the Chi Luck Dragon of your clan is enough to bless one first-class insurgent to have the battle prowess of an eternal for a short period. We have taken measures to prevent that from happening, so in the next 10 minutes if you don't make a decision, we will begin a massacre, explained Xianxia with a leisurely tone. You. Hurry up, we have already wasted more than 2 minutes. Huang activated her Yin Law to cool her mind. You can have half the positions but they must all be unimportant ones. Or, you can have a quarter of them but only a few important ones. No bargaining. Little lady, you don't seem to. Pick one of these options. Otherwise, our ancient clan will wage Emperor Dao war with all of you until both sides perish. Don't worry, I will pay extra care to use sword-casting Villa during that war. Xianxia's mouth twitched. No matter how weak the ancient clan was, it was still one of the most powerful factions in the world due to its ancient heritage and the fact they were an amalgam of many factions with great destiny and luck. So, if they went crazy, the sword-casting Villa would suffer. Decisive, aren't we? Commented Xianxia. Fine, we will take the second option. However, we want half the important positions.